It feels like a little piece of Britain under the sun. I bet no one would be surprised if UK border checks popped up on the roads to Benidorm. Many of us visited here as kids with our parents for vacations. Since the late 60s, it has attracted lots of Brits with promises of golden beaches, sunny weather, and affordable drinks. As we grew up, we still held on to memories of Benidorm, though it became more about quick weekend getaways. The exception was our yearly trip for a week of fun in the sun. Over 20 years ago, a British-themed bar started a tradition. They offered a free drink every Thursday to anyone who showed up in a costume. The Spanish fiesta ended on Wednesday with fireworks. The bar wanted to keep the festive spirit alive by hosting a party the next day. It turned out to be a great idea for their business. Unknowingly, they started an event that became Europe's largest costume party, which is still going strong today, even though that original bar is no longer around. For me, Chris Watts, this event has become the highlight of our yearly trips with my friends, Jacob, Will, Rich, and Mike. We've been doing this every year since I turned 19. Over the last 10 years, we all got married. For the past 5 trips, we've come as couples. This might be our last big trip. Rich's wife, Olivia, was 2 months pregnant, and my wife, Ashley, had recently stopped taking birth control. We were hoping for good news soon. The costume day kicked off at noon. This year, we dressed as airline crew, inspired by a popular budget airline. We bought outfits that looked like uniforms and made laminated cards mimicking emergency instructions. We even got some funny props to enhance our skits. We had custom name tags for our made-up airline, Sleazy Jet. With around 30,000 people attending, the mood was lively and cheerful. The girls remarked on some costumes that would surprise many, as they were quite bold for public wear. I just smiled and chuckled. The girls had their versions of the airline attendant outfits. Knowing how competitive they could be, they surely aimed to impress each other with the shortest skirts. I noticed that most skirts barely reached mid-thigh, and the girls also wore tall heels and snug blouses. If we were anywhere else right now, anyone who saw us might think they were watching a film crew for a funny movie. Our group of women was lively and full of energy. It was a fantastic day. Drinks were plentiful, and many people found our performance, which was a playful take on an airline's emergency procedure, very amusing. The best part was when the women showed how to use an emergency whistle to get attention. They found some oversized whistles shaped in a playful way, and when they blew into them, the cheers and laughter were contagious, drawing a crowd who wanted to record our fun. As the day went on, we strolled along the famous strip. The sun was shining and the drinks continued. By midnight, we were winding down at the Western Bar. Olivia was the only one not drinking, as she was expecting a baby and chose water instead. We were relaxed and a little tipsy as we finished our next round of drinks. Emily tossed out a question, something we often did when we were playful. Sometimes these silly questions led to arguments, so I hoped tonight wouldn't be one of those nights. Chris, if you hadn't ended up with Ashley, who would you have picked instead? I smiled, knowing this was a typical flirty question. I looked at Ashley, who gave me a curious look as everyone waited for my answer. Even in my slightly tipsy state, I realized this could lead to trouble. After thinking for a moment, I replied, Judy Angus. Judy had been a shy girl in school who eventually went off to university, and I had heard she moved away, possibly to Australia or New Zealand. Ashley let out a laugh at my answer, and Emily jumped in. No, silly. We mean someone from our group. If you weren't with Ashley, who would it be? Ashley crossed her arms, her amused expression turning into a light frown. I surprised myself with my next answer. If everyone had any sense, they would steer the conversation in a different direction. With everyone looking at me, I raised my glass and suggested a toast. Ladies, I'm with Ashley because I care about her and there is no one else. But I know you won't take that as an answer. I would gladly have spent time with any of you. Just remember, Ashley is my top choice. She always has been and always will be. Everyone laughed as we clinked our glasses together in cheers. I felt pleased that I had given us an answer that everyone could agree on. If they followed my lead, the silly conversation would come to an end. Unfortunately, Mike went next, and things took a different turn. I hadn't realized there was some history in our group, and it was about to come up. As you all know, Brianna and I had something going on before I married Hannah, who is the true love of my life. If I had to choose, it would be Brianna. But of course, that's not happening because I love Hannah deeply. I noticed that Will wasn't too pleased, but it passed when Brianna gave him a big hug and kissed him on the cheek, which led Hannah to do the same with Mike. This brought cheers from the group. Jacob was next to speak, and as soon as he started, I had a feeling where it was going. Like Mike, I have a bit of history too. When we were 14, I dated Ashley for about 2 weeks before she left me for my old buddy over there. Does it matter now? Not at all. I'm happily married to Emily, and we'll be together forever. He raised his glass in my direction, and I did the same along with everyone else as the girls responded with an "ah" at his sweet comment. I glanced at Ashley, and she gave me a playful tipsy wink. Will ended up picking Hannah, and Rich picked Emily to complete the round. Then Ashley chimed in. So, Chris, it looks like you picked Olivia. Huh? No, I said I'd be fine with any of the girls if I wasn't with you. I was just answering the silly question. Emily decided to add her thoughts. Well, we can't be shared, so it looks like you're with Olivia. What? This is just one of those pointless reality show questions you like to throw out. It's not real, Em. She just shrugged and muttered, whatever. This was the kind of thing that happened once the drinks started flowing. I felt the need to take a break, so I headed off for a moment. When I came back, everyone was dancing, except for Olivia, who saw me and made her way over. We should dance, she said. I looked around, searching for Ashley's reaction, but then noticed the guys were all dancing with the women they had chosen earlier, based on that silly question. Shaking my head, I began to dance with Olivia. She kept looking at me like she wanted to say something, but held back. For the next hour, we all swapped partners a few times, but as the night wore on, people seemed to naturally end up dancing with the ones they'd picked earlier. At one point, I saw Jacob's hands resting on Ashley's back, pulling her in close, and she didn't seem to mind. I let go of Olivia and made my way over, tapping him on the shoulder firmly. He looked surprised. If you don't mind, I'd like to dance with my wife, I said. Jacob stepped aside, giving me a goofy grin, and I took over. As we began to dance, Ashley said quietly, That wasn't necessary, Chris. Yeah, you're probably right. I never asked him to act that way. It was wrong for him to touch you like that. More importantly, you didn't really try to stop him either. Hey, don't be jealous. I chose you, remember? This is our last time together like this. The next time we come back, we'll be busy with our kids at the beach all day, not out at bars. Come on, let's make tonight special. Ash, this whole trip has been amazing, especially today. I don't want to let drinks or emotions ruin it. I'm tired and need to go to bed. We should head back. I don't want to go. What's wrong? Don't you like Olivia anymore? Of course I like her, but what does that matter? You're starting to talk nonsense because you're tired too. Let's just go. We've had enough to drink. No, I don't want to spoil the night. This is our special last night, don't you think? Yes, it is special, but I really can't drink anymore. You know I can be grumpy when I'm done. She pushed away from me, clearly at a point where she might start acting strangely. Go on! Run home to bed and miss all the fun! Before I could respond, Olivia took her arm and gently led her away before returning to me. It's okay, Chris. We won't be here much longer. I'll make sure she doesn't drink more and gets to your room. It's not worth causing a scene. Olivia looked a bit sad. I figured being the only sober one among us must be tough. I noticed the others laughing or shaking their heads at me. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. It reminded me of a New Year's Eve party from a few years back, when Rich and Emily got carried away and things escalated into a messy argument. The next day, there were a lot of apologies and hangovers. The drinks were always to blame, and things went back to normal in a week or so. Feeling assured that Ashley was in good hands with Olivia, I slowly made my way back to the hotel alone. By 1:30, I was back at our hotel. We had asked for 5 rooms with a pool view, but we received upgraded rooms on the top floor. They were bigger than usual, with a separate bedroom instead of just a studio. I got ready for bed after a long day. Before long, I was tucked under the sheets. As I lay there trying to sleep, I remembered what Jacob had said about picking Ashley. I chuckled quietly to myself. Yes, she did date him for just 2 weeks, but for the next 4 years, he tried hard to impress her and win her back. He focused on sports, schoolwork, and even showed off his car when he turned 17. I always thought that if Ashley had left me during the first year he dated Emily, he would have moved on quickly, but that never happened. As these thoughts played in my mind, I slowly fell asleep. Suddenly, something woke me from my light sleep. I felt a gentle kiss on my forehead. Half opening my eyes, I saw Ashley standing there in a revealing red outfit. I groaned a little. "Come on, Ash, it's late and we've been drinking all day. I doubt little Chris can wake up right now. Can we just wait till morning?" In a playful tone, she replied, "We might not get another chance like this. We promised to make it special." I could only manage another groan. "Okay, but later." She giggled, and I pulled the pillow over my head as I assumed she walked out of the bedroom, maybe to the bathroom. I was so tired that I quickly fell back asleep. I barely noticed as she sat down on the bed and the room grew dark. "Please, Ash, wait until morning. I promise we'll have a good time. Just get into bed." She didn't say anything. Instead, she pulled the sheets back and quietly joined me in bed, snuggling against my back. Still feeling tired and the effects of the drinks, I quickly dozed off again. At some point, I woke up again. Did I just hear the apartment door open and close? I reached out in the darkness but found the bed next to me empty. "Ash, what's going on? Did I hear the door?" I could see her silhouette standing near the door. "Shh, don't worry. Just go back to sleep. We can talk in the morning." I must have imagined the noise. She probably went to the bathroom. With that thought, I drifted back to sleep. I was suddenly woken by the sound of someone being sick. It was Ashley in the bathroom. "I told you not to drink so much. Do you want some water?" A weak yes came from her. I reluctantly got up and took a bottle of water to the bathroom, where I found Ashley kneeling on the floor. She had her head resting on her arms on the toilet seat. I placed the water next to her and she whispered a thank you. This was not the typical Ashley I knew. It had been a long time since I had seen her like this. "I did warn you to take it easy and to leave with me instead of staying out, so this is what you get," I said, feeling a bit better for mentioning she shouldn't have left with her friends. I chuckled a bit, finding some humor in the situation. She let out a small groan. "What's so funny?" she asked. "I don't know, think of it as practice for if you get morning sickness later on." "Shut up, I don't think that's funny." I was surprised by her reaction to my light joke. "Come on, Ash, it was just a joke. You could have left and come back with me." Suddenly, she turned away as more noise came from the bathroom. I decided it was best to let her deal with it. I closed the door but left it slightly open. I turned on the kettle, needing some coffee. We weren't heavy drinkers, and it was unusual for either of us to go overboard these days. It made me smile, thinking how we both had been where Ashley was now in our younger years, treating the bathroom like a friend. Sitting out on the balcony with my coffee, I heard a phone buzzing. I checked mine. No messages. It had to be Ashley's phone. This was usual for her. The girls seemed to keep phone companies in business with all their texting. But this was different. Her phone buzzed constantly. "Ashley, your phone is going crazy with messages. Do you think the others can hear you?" There was no reply. Then I heard the bathroom door close and lock. She must have come out quickly to grab her phone. I wondered what I had done to upset her so much. Then it hit me. I walked to the bathroom door and spoke softly. "Is this about earlier when you came back and I said no? You looked amazing, as usual, but I really needed some rest. We don't check out until 2 this afternoon. If you feel better later, I promise I will make it up to you. You know I care about you." Ashley started crying loudly and I felt lost. I tried the door, but it was locked. She wanted to be alone and that stung. My dad always said there's no guide for understanding women. You just have to figure it out as you go. He was definitely right at that moment. 30 minutes later, I needed to use the restroom. I heard the shower running for a bit before she came out, wrapped in a towel with a smaller one over her head. After using the shower myself, I got dried and dressed. Ashley was on the balcony typing away on her phone. I noticed she was wearing a dress she had brought for a cooler day, along with a scarf around her neck. All week, the girls had been wearing summer dresses that showed a lot of skin. She didn't say anything to me. Instead, she sat on the balcony staring at her phone. Something seemed off. Maybe I had drunk too much and said or did something foolish. Did I make too big a deal about her dancing with Jacob? I sat across from her at the table on the balcony, but she didn't try to make eye contact. Did I do something wrong? The way you're acting makes me think I did. Did I upset you? She kept looking down and just shook her head gently. Is it something someone said or did? There was no answer. Then I noticed tears rolling down her chin. With her head down, I couldn't see her eyes, but the tears kept flowing. This was confusing. There had been a lot of messages going around. Maybe she had fallen out with one or more of the other girls. This had happened before, and it could happen again. What could have gone wrong? Is it about that game you played last night? Did something happen because Jacob said he would have picked you if he hadn't ended up with Emily? I must have hit a nerve. She suddenly jumped up from her chair, rushed over to me, and wrapped her arms around my neck, crying hard into my shoulder. I still didn't fully understand what was happening. After she calmed down, I suggested we head downstairs to join the others in the dining room. At least being with the group might help clarify things. Ashley began to explain what I guessed was part of the messages from earlier. They decided to have breakfast out this morning. They all got up really early and went for a walk. They thought it might help clear their heads. That's frustrating. They could have at least waited for us to get ready. Don't be mad. They did send a message, but I didn't see it because I was feeling sick. I knew she was lying. I could tell. She often made silly excuses, like not knowing how the car door got scratched when she opened it too close to a wall. But why lie about our friends going out? It seemed something big had happened with the girls, and I was starting to feel like the others were against Ashley. This wasn't right, so I decided it was time to find out what was really going on. Ashley wanted to stay at the hotel. It was clear she was trying to avoid the others, but I wasn't going to let that happen. When I said I would go look for them myself, she finally agreed to come with me. I found out the name of the place she mentioned. It was in a quiet area in the old town. As we walked along, I could tell that something was still bothering her. It was really hot outside, yet she kept her scarf on, saying she felt a little cold. As we got to the old part of town, I happened to look down an alley and saw our friends sitting at tables outside a bar. This was not where we were supposed to go. I turned to walk towards them when Ashley pleaded with me. Please, let's go somewhere else. Can't we just enjoy the rest of the day together? I stopped and faced her. I don't know what's going on, but this isn't right. They shouldn't treat you like this. I need to talk to them. After that, if it's that bad, we can part ways. I'll even call a taxi for us to the airport instead of taking the minibus with them. Ignoring the protests behind me, I marched towards them. When Mike realized I was coming, everyone's eyes turned to me, looking uneasy. They were gathered around some tables. Ashley caught up with me and stood by my side. I was determined to speak clearly. I don't know what you all think Ashley has done, but you are poor friends for ignoring her like this. They exchanged shocked looks. Ashley grabbed my arm, urging me to walk away. I started to wonder if maybe it wasn't Ashley's fault. Was it something I had done? Someone say something. Your expressions are making me think it's my fault. Jacob finally spoke, his smirk making me uneasy. No, mate, it's what you didn't do that's the issue. Emily elbowed him, and the others mumbled under their breath, shifting in their seats with that same smirk on his face. Growing up, I often felt competition with them. I remembered my thoughts as I was trying to sleep last night. Olivia didn't look at me. Her head was down, focused on her coffee cup. Then I noticed something on Brianna and Hannah's necks. They both had marks in the same spot. When they saw me glare at them, they fidgeted nervously. Hannah raised a hand to cover hers. No, this couldn't be true. Turning quickly, I tugged at the scarf around Ashley's neck. She tried to stop me, but it didn't matter. I caught a glimpse of what I feared was there. A mark in a similar spot as the others. Jacob, Will, Mike, and Rich stood up, taking defensive stances. I glared at them all. What is happening? Just tell me. You, Ashley, is this true? Did you? Ashley interrupted loudly. You agreed to it. You said you were okay with it. Olivia came into our room, but you were asleep and she felt nervous. I was confused and could not believe what she thought happened. Why did she believe that? She started to cry, but tried to explain. When you were in bed, I came to you in the teddy. I said we all wanted to make a memory for us, and you said it was okay. We all switched rooms, but it went wrong. It was supposed to be fun for everyone. I quickly replied, not once did I agree to what you and everyone else did. Tell me, when did I ever say, I'm going to go have fun with your friends? Even if I was drunk, I would remember that. You were just talking strangely after that silly game. So no, I definitely didn't say it was okay. By now, she was crying hard, and my mind was racing. I looked around until my eyes found the smirker. I knew who had crossed the line. As our eyes met, he understood what was about to happen. In a sudden burst of anger, I flipped over the table, sending everything on it crashing to the ground. The room was silent for a moment, which allowed me to step forward and land a hard punch to his face. He fell down. After that, everything became a blur, and suddenly, I was lying on the floor with two people holding me down. I turned my head and saw Ashley sitting on the ground with some blood in her hair as people rushed around her. What had gone so wrong? The police arrived quickly. I saw the cafe owner and staff talking rapidly to them, pointing at the mess, the injured people, and finally at me. It was clear they were blaming me, and I felt their anger and disgust in the eyes of my so-called friends and the small crowd that gathered. I called out to Ashley, but she didn't respond, choosing to ignore me completely. Minutes later, the police pulled my hands behind my back and handcuffed me as they lifted me. I turned and shouted back at Ashley, but she looked away, letting Emily comfort her. I didn't understand. I hadn't heard her this was done to me. I knew I had hit Jacob a few times, but if what I thought happened was true, he deserved it. I was taken to the police station where someone checked my injuries. My face felt sore. I guessed I had taken a hit. Looking at my knuckles, they were scraped, and I realized I had connected with Jacob more than I remembered. A police officer came and took my statement, explaining I had been arrested for causing trouble. He sounded bored, like he had done this many times before, day in and day out. I felt a bit embarrassed to be in this situation. I was in a holding cell with 6 other guys, most of them British, all looking worse for wear. They had been here since late last night or early this morning. One quiet guy from Spain kept to himself. One by one, they left the cell and new faces came in as the day went on. I stayed in the holding cell for several hours. Eventually, I was taken to another room where they asked more questions and told me I could make a phone call. I called Ashley's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I asked her to come to the police station so we could figure out another flight home. I foolishly believed I would be out by the end of the day. They gave me a list of lawyers if I wanted one and asked if I needed a translator for court. Court? I learned I would be charged with several offenses. Back in the holding cell, I tried to sort through what had happened. Although no one had said it clearly, it seemed the girls had switched rooms, and it felt like they thought I had agreed to it. If Ashley had gone and been with Jacob, why didn't I remember being with Olivia? They said she had gotten cold feet and just laid next to me. Wow, she was the one who climbed into the bed first. If she had woken me up, I could have stopped it all. Doing something that went against my beliefs was something I would never agree to. Could I have been so drunk that I went along with something so out of character? I was sure I hadn't. I put my head in my hands as my thoughts raced. As the day went on, more guys came into the cell until it was nearly full, each of them there because of too much drinking and misunderstandings that led to fights. I was shocked when a big tattooed guy said someone had said the name of a rival football team behind him, and that was enough to start a fight. Some people are unbelievable. At least I was here because of something serious that could ruin my marriage. By evening, I began to worry. I asked one of the police officers if anyone was looking for me or had tried to reach me. When they checked my pockets when I arrived, my phone had been broken and was unusable, not that it mattered since they had taken all my belongings. At some point that evening, I was taken with another guy to Alicante. He bragged about how he had stomped on someone's head several times, even while the person was unconscious. To me, he was exactly the kind of person who deserved to be locked up and kept away from others. As the police van traveled from Benidorm, I felt really worried. Ashley must have gone to the police station. When they put me in the police van, they had my passport to prove who I was. I could see my suitcase in the back. I wondered why my wife didn't just keep it with her at the hotel. Even if she couldn't stay longer, there were plenty of other places to go. When we arrived at Alicante prison, I felt heavy with worry, especially since I was with someone facing serious charges. I was taken to a cell with another Brit. This was my new life. The next day, a tired-looking man from the British consulate came to see me. Things did not look good. I was being charged with several crimes. I accepted the first 2 criminal damage and assault, but I disagreed with the charge of causing harm. Yes, I hit Jacob, but he tried to hit me first, so it was self-defense. I was shocked to hear that I was accused of hitting 2 women, including my wife. I made my case, but he advised me to plead guilty to avoid being stuck here for weeks or months until my case went to a higher court. Then, he delivered the hard truth. Similar cases usually led to 1 to 3 months in jail. I was speechless. Does my wife know I'm here? I can't reach her. She may need to get a hotel in Alicante instead of Benidorm. The consulate representative cleared his throat, knowing my next question would be hard to hear. Yes, your wife knows. We contacted her since she is listed as your emergency contact. She left on her original flight home. She received care at the scene, spoke to the police, chose not to go to the hospital, and arranged to fly back. Before she left, she gave the police your passport and personal things. She assured the consulate she will not be returning. I felt stunned. My wife had left me here. It seemed so cruel. We talked about what might happen next. The consulate would inform her about the case, and then a court date would follow, leading to time in a Spanish prison. When I returned to my cell, I sat quietly while my new cellmate, Bill, had a similar meeting with the consulate representative. I kept thinking about what happened at the cafe. Yes, I did hit Jacob, and he fell after my punch. Someone punched me from the side, and I turned, hitting Mike in the stomach. A chair hit my back, but I wasn't sure who did that, maybe one of the women. I remembered the chaos, pushing, shouting, and people rushing in to hold me back. I couldn't recall hitting any women, especially not my wife. 2 days later, I went to court. An interpreter read the charges, and I held on to the advice from the consulate representative. Phipps was there when I was given 30 days, including the few days I had already spent locked up. They took me back to my cell. Bill didn't come back, and I had no idea what happened with his case. I felt alone and hoped Ashley would visit. I figured she had told my parents. I expected them to come to Spain and see me. But no one came. Not a single soul. In my second week, I got a new cellmate, a guy about my age. "Hi, I'm Chris. Looks like I've been given an extra month here." He laughed. "We must be in the same boat. I got sent here too. The police cells were full, so they brought me here. I was just having a good time with my friends on a trip when everything went wrong. One moment I was enjoying drinks by the beach, and the next, I was knocked out. I woke up in the hospital and later found out I was accused of hurting a police officer. I say I'm innocent, and I plan to fight it. So here I am, just waiting. Please tell me it wasn't you who hit me on the head, or this stay is going to be a real challenge." We both laughed and shook our heads. It turned out Josh was in a similar situation, which he explained. "We were all drinking. Sure, we had a few, but we weren't looking for trouble. I didn't even see what went wrong. Suddenly, everything exploded into chaos. I tried to step back, and I think someone hit me with a bar stool. The next thing I knew, I was on the floor, dazed. I vaguely remember trying to stand up after that. I grabbed a broken stool leg, probably the one that hit me. Just as I got up, it broke, so I ended up holding a piece in my hand. Then the cops rushed in. I raised my hands but didn't let go of the stool leg. Before I knew it, the police pushed me to the ground, shouting at me in Spanish. Next, I was in handcuffs, in a police van, and on my way to the hospital for my head injury. I shook my head, and I thought I was all alone in this mess. Dinner time arrived, and we headed to the canteen. Josh made a comment. "Don't look too obvious, but check out the 2 guys at the end of the table. I'm pretty sure they were at the bar when we got caught. I saw one of them pointing at me." I glanced over. They were indeed watching us. Josh looked worried. I suggested, "Maybe we should just stay away from them." "Yeah, you're right. We'll just have to share our life stories to pass the time." We both laughed and shook our heads. I liked him. He seemed to have a similar outlook on life. Back in the cell, we talked about our lives, and it was surprising how many things matched in our stories. He was married, and his wife's name was Lauren. He shared how long it took him to find the courage to ask her out because he thought he didn't look as good as she did. I couldn't help but make a light joke. Maybe she shouldn't get her vision checked then. We both chuckled. Even in the short time we had known each other, we had a connection. We felt comfortable joking without hurting each other's feelings. It turned out that Josh's family owned a big car dealership in Bournemouth. His dad had made him start at the bottom, and now he was the second in charge. Josh had a sister, and there was a complicated story about his ex-brother-in-law, Jerry, who had some troubles that landed him in prison. Josh's brother-in-law's brother, Brett, was a director at the dealership, but had to leave because of family issues. It seemed like both brothers were distant from Josh's family now. My dad said I had to step up sooner than planned, and the other directors agreed. As the managing director, what my dad wants usually happens. Before that, I was happy just working with cars. I can't say the first year was enjoyable, but now that I've learned the business, I'm feeling good about it. Josh asked about my story. I shared what I thought happened the night before my arrest, although I was uncertain about everything. For the first time since everything had started, I let my guard down and cried. Josh came over and sat next to me, putting an arm around my shoulder. It's okay. Let it all out. I thought my situation was tough, but that's really something. I cried about feeling lonely, abandoned, and how I had admitted in court to hurting my wife, even though I truly believed I hadn't done it. Despite not knowing each other long, Josh became my best friend and my only support in that cell. He never judged me or said anything hurtful. The next morning, we went to the shower area together. Two guys who had been looking at Josh the day before entered the block and stared at him. It felt wrong. I saw one of them pull out something from his towel, and I realized it was a sharpened object. While one blocked the entrance, the other moved toward Josh from behind. Without thinking, I rushed over and bumped into the guy, sending him hard against the tiled wall. He fell to the ground. I quickly stepped on his hand, making him drop the makeshift weapon, which turned out to be a sharpened toothbrush. When his friend came towards us, I picked up the toothbrush to protect us. An inmate walked into the shower area. Guards! I quickly tossed my toothbrush into a shower stall and helped the guy off the floor just as the guards arrived. They came over and seemed suspicious. The man on the floor spoke up. I slipped. He raised his leg as if to show how he fell. The guards glanced at his hand and then took him away. Thankfully, they didn't look any further in the showers. The man's friend shot me a cold look. You should have stayed out of this. You're in big trouble now, just like him. He turned and left the shower area. I felt shaky and my heart raced, just like Josh's. He realized something bad was about to happen, and I saw fear in his eyes. We cleaned ourselves up quickly and went back to our cell. From that moment on, we stuck together. If we saw our two friends in an open space, we made sure to stay close to the guards. Josh was sure they had been in the bar where everything started, leading to his arrest. He believed they thought he was allied with the other group involved in the fight. By the end of my third week, a lawyer came for Josh. His dad had finally found him and got a good law firm in Spain to help. Within a day, the lawyer and the prosecutor had CCTV footage from the bar that clearly showed Josh had no part in the fight. He was trying to back away when he was attacked. He laid there for a while and then got up looking confused after a stool broke. This made the police think he was about to attack them. There was no case against him, and Josh was released within hours. Chris, I can't thank you enough. I'm still here because of you. I will do everything I can to get you out and deal with those two. It's been nice getting to know you, even in these strange situations. I told my dad about what happened to you and how you've been left behind. We left you a prepaid card with a couple of €100, just in case you need it when you leave here. My dad is also leaving a case of cigarettes because they're useful here. Trust me, my dad knows what's important. When you get out and back home, please stay in touch. I felt grateful that someone who had known me for such a short time was looking out for me. I truly saw Josh as a brother. I'll get in touch as soon as I'm home and sort everything out. I'll pay you back for the money and would like to take you and your dad out for dinner as a thank you. He laughed. Don't worry. My dad is just glad I've been with a good guy like you. His biggest worry was that I might have been married off here and would come out with a different name. Now he knows I almost left here in a bad way. We both laughed. The guard signaled that Josh had to go. His last words were to be strong. He promised to think of me over the next week and said he would be there when I returned to the UK. We hugged, and then he was gone. For my last few days in this place, I got a new cellmate named Baza. He was from Newcastle and was a large guy. Unlike Josh, he was not nice at all. He bragged about serving time for fighting and looked down on me because I didn't care about football or any teams. His life seemed to involve smoking, drinking, and fighting. To my surprise, I found out he was actually married. I felt sorry for his wife, having to deal with someone like him. Later that day, I received a case of cigarettes and noticed the jealous looks from others in the room. It seemed that some would have no problem taking my stash if they got the chance. Sitting back in the cell, I daydreamed about what I could do with those cigarettes. I remembered the old TV show Porridge and thought about what those cigarettes could buy, maybe some snacks or a little treat. I chuckled to myself. "What's so funny over there?" Baza asked. I had almost forgotten he was there. "Nothing much, just thinking about that old show, Porridge." He snorted. "Yeah, it was funny back in the day. What are you going to do with those cigarettes?" I glanced over at him. He was fidgeting, rolling his hand around his fingers absent-mindedly. His fingers were stained from smoking, and he looked at the carton like a kid gazing at a big present. I smiled to myself. Josh's dad really had a way of seeing things. "How about this? You can have all these cigarettes if you watch out for me. There are a couple of guys in here who don't like me much. If you keep an eye on them, they're yours." Suddenly, he walked over and grabbed the carton from me, his eyes focused on it as he spoke. "Deal. That sounds fair to me?" I thought I was in the clear, but it didn't go as I hoped. On the morning of my release, we headed to the shower area. There were a few other people there. Baza stepped in first while I waited, and one of the other inmates left as he did. Suddenly, my two so-called friends rushed in, coming right toward me. "Baza!" was all I managed to say before a punch hit the side of my face, and I fell to the ground. I felt a foot on my ribs, taking the breath out of me. But then it stopped. As I held my ribs, I turned my head and saw one of them lying unconscious beside me. Looking up, I saw Baza had the other one in a tight hold, and his face was turning purple. "I should have known you'd be a couple of softies. You really thought you could mess with me?" A few other people in the room were watching. Baza shouted at them, "Don't just stand there. Help him up and get him out of here before the guards come in. And Chris, if I don't get my cigarettes every week, I'll come look for you when I'm out." I was helped to my feet and looked at Baza, giving him a thumbs up. I knew I was lucky to have him there. A few packs of cigarettes didn't seem like much for avoiding a serious beating. As I walked out, he let go of the second guy, who fell to the floor. I couldn't wait to leave this crazy place. Later, I was finally released. The guards laughed at my swollen face as I walked away from the prison. I struggled to breathe, but I was glad to be out. Standing outside in the sun, it hit me there was no one here to greet me. I wondered why nobody came to see me. They had to know I was getting out. I had about 50 euros in my wallet, so I made my way to the center of Alicante and found a bank. I tried to use the cash machine with my debit card, but after entering my PIN, it took my card and told me to contact the bank. I tried my credit card too, but it did the same thing. Thankfully, I remembered the prepaid card that Josh had given me. Without a smartphone, it was tough to find my way around. I finally found the bus station and took a bus to the airport. I caught a late morning flight back to Gatwick, hoping the prepaid card would have enough for a train home. At 4 in the afternoon, the bus finally arrived in my hometown, Beckastone. Once just a village, it had grown over the years into a small suburban town. With a supermarket and a few pubs, it barely felt like a village anymore. You might not know everyone, but you were sure to know someone in every family. Getting off the bus, I felt worn out. I just wanted to go home and rest. My ribs were aching, and the stress from traveling and everything that happened that morning left me feeling completely exhausted. I had just under 10 pounds in my wallet, enough for a quick drink before going home to see what kind of welcome awaited me. As it turned out, I would find out long before I reached home. At this time of day, there were not many people in the pub. A few older gentlemen came here every day, enjoying their drinks slowly. There was a man who had lost his job and a couple of kids who probably skipped college. As soon as I walked in, everyone turned to look at me, and conversation stopped while I made my way to the bar. Claire, the barmaid, poured me a pint but didn't say much. She seemed a bit uncomfortable serving me. I figured it was because I looked a bit rough. As I took my first few sips of the cold beer, the landlord appeared from the cellar. When he saw me, he paused. "When you're done with that beer, please leave. You're not welcome here anymore." I was shocked. This was the last thing I expected to hear. "Why can't I stay? I haven't done anything wrong." He leaned over the bar, getting very close to me. Option 1, say nothing, finish your beer quickly and walk out. Option 2, say another word, and I will take your drink and throw it away. Then I'll show you the door. From the look on your face, I can tell you're not too popular with anyone." Feeling frustrated, I finished my beer fast and slammed the empty glass down on the bar before leaving. It was just under a mile to walk home. Ashley should still be at work, so I could take a quick nap before we had to talk about what had happened. I couldn't stop thinking about why the landlord had acted that way towards me. My gut told me that the truth had been twisted, making me look bad. I walked the mile home. Without my keys, I planned to use the spare keys from the hidden key safe. I entered the code, but the door stayed locked. What was going on? Why had she changed the code? This was my house, too. It had once belonged to her grandmother, who had passed away. Her parents had sold it to us for $20,000 less than what it was worth, calling it a wedding gift. We had no mortgage. Everything was legal and in a contract. Ashley would not return from work until 6, so I decided to walk to my parents' house, which was about a 10-minute walk. I wanted to know why they had left me alone in Spain. As I walked up their garden path, my mom spotted me through the kitchen window while she was doing the dishes. Before I got to the door, she opened it and told me to hurry inside. She looked out the door to see if anyone was nearby. As I walked in, my dad came out of the hallway. My mom must have called him. They didn't say anything to me. No friendly words or feelings were shared. They both looked really upset. I felt annoyed and decided to respond with sarcasm. "Nice welcome home. You seem so happy to see me." Then I felt a sting. My mom had slapped me. "How can you come in here with that attitude? You're lucky we even opened the door. We didn't want the neighbors to see you and make a scene. And what happened to you? Why are you always getting into fights?" I met my mom's fiery gaze. It was my turn to speak. "My attitude? Your neighbors? What kind of parents leave their son in a strange place in a bad situation and then don't help him when he's back? They must be terrible parents." My dad stepped closer, his face reddening. I had never seen him lose his temper like this. "Get out of our house. I won't allow someone who causes trouble to stay here." I raised my hands in a gesture of peace. "Whoa, wait a minute. What did you just say?" My heart raced as anger bubbled up inside me. My mom tried to calm things down. "Chris, we know what happened. We heard about your time in prison. Everyone knows, and it's shameful for our family. Stop! Let me explain what really happened. Then maybe we can figure out the truth. Is this based on what Ashley told you?" My dad nodded, still angry, though trying to control it. He added that it wasn't just Ashley. Our friends had told them, too. I shook my head, frustrated. "Mom, let's have a cup of tea. I want to share my side, please. I think it has been twisted, and I have an idea why." She went to the kitchen, and I followed my dad into the conservatory. We sat quietly until my mom returned with the tea. Once we were settled, I recounted everything. The silly game, the strange things with the girls, Ashley's odd behavior, how our friends avoided us until we found them, and how things escalated. I might have fought with the guys, but I swear on my own honor, I never touched Ashley or the other girls. Throughout my story, my parents exchanged worried glances. When I finished, my dad asked a question. "So, let me get this straight. Ashley went into Jacob's room and you think something happened? Does that mean someone was with you that night?" "Dad, I was in a bad state. I remember getting ready for bed and Ashley was there too. She said something, but I can't recall exactly what. I told her let's wait until morning. I remember stirring a few times. At one point I thought I heard the door open and shut, but I was mostly asleep and had been drinking. Then I woke up and it seemed something happened that I didn't know about. I think it was Olivia who came into bed with me. They say we were together that night." My dad took a sip of his tea and looked at my mom before speaking. "I'm not saying we don't believe you, but this is a very different story from what others have said. There hasn't been any mention of the swapping you talked about. The story is that you found out something upsetting, and the others chose to leave you and Ashley behind. When you saw them later, they shared their honest feelings about the news. You got so upset that you confronted Jacob. They tried to intervene, and when Ashley tried to calm you down, you lashed out and hit her, then swung at Mike before they and the cafe staff could stop you. My parents, the two people who should know me best, seemed to doubt me. I could see the uncertainty in their eyes. Do you really think I would do that? You raised me, taught me right from wrong. Do you honestly believe I'd hurt Ashley?" There was a pause, and they exchanged glances, as if they were trying to read each other's thoughts. Finally, my mom spoke. We've seen a translation of your court case. There's a blogger who follows the worst cases in Benidorm. It says you pleaded guilty to all the charges and admitted you hit your wife. She started to cry, and my dad moved closer to comfort her. I waited until she calmed down a bit and then tried to explain. The consulate's advisor told me that if I pleaded not guilty, I could face a long wait in jail before getting a proper hearing. He said pleading guilty was the fastest way to get out, so I went along with it. I only said I was guilty to come home. I thought someone would help me, but everyone seemed to leave me behind. If it weren't for another guy and his dad who helped me with some money to get home, I'd probably still be outside, maybe begging for help. Mom, Dad, I promise I didn't hurt Ashley. She must have just fallen during the commotion. Think about it. If what I'm saying is true, then they are just trying to protect themselves. You have to believe me. Once again, they exchanged glances. My mom asked my dad if he wanted another cup of tea and went into the kitchen. I could hear her talking to someone while she was there. When she came back, she seemed tense as she poured the tea and sat down. I just spoke to Ash. She's leaving work early and coming here. Thanks, but I need to change my clothes. They're the only clean ones I have. Can I get the spare keys to get back to my place? My dad interrupted me. Sorry, son, we can't do that. What do you mean you can't? I saw them hanging by the door when I came in. That's one of the reasons I came here. You can take them if you want, but it won't help. Ashley changed all the locks and we don't have a key. I was shocked. Wait, did I just hear that right? The house I've been paying for, my home, and I can't get into it? When is she getting here? They both looked at me, my frustration clear on my face before my mom spoke. You should be ashamed. Don't speak about your wife like that. That kind of attitude is why you ended up in jail, and look at you, still in trouble. I fumed, feeling betrayed by my own parents. Trouble? You think I got hurt from trouble? I was trying to save a friend in prison. This morning they really tried to hurt me too. They both looked shocked as I glared at them. My mom took a deep breath, apologized, and reminded me to stay calm. I took a shower and had a quick snack. I heard the front door open. It seemed Ashley still had keys to my parents' house, which really upset me. I tried to mask my anger, but it was hard. There were huge problems being with a former friend, hiding the truth, and leaving me behind. After some polite exchanges between her and my parents, Ashley came into the conservatory where I had stepped away. My mom and dad went into the living room and closed the doors behind them. They might not hear us, but they stayed so they could see us both. It was clear they didn't trust me to behave. Ashley seemed anxious, so I stayed quiet, letting her start the conversation. How have you been, Chris? What a silly question. My jaw tightened for a moment. I wanted to shake her for the way things had gone, but that would only make things worse. Well, I'm just fine. It seems I married someone I really can't trust. Everyone had lied to me about what happened. My wife left me in Spain, took away all the money I needed when I got out, and I almost didn't make it out of prison alive this morning. Yep, I'm doing great. How about you? She sat quietly, looking down, saying nothing. Lost your voice? Or maybe you feel guilty for what you've done. She looked up, her face turning angry, and then she started to speak. Her voice was low, so my parents wouldn't hear, but it was filled with attitude. This is all your fault. You agreed to this, then you fell asleep at the last moment. You messed everything up. I took a deep breath. I didn't expect that reaction. There's a saying that the best defense is a good offense, and that's what I was seeing. I tried to stay calm. Calm down. Some of the things you're saying don't make sense. It feels like you've had a talk with someone else, not me. Let's start over. What did I agree to, and when? Because I don't remember that at all. So, she began to explain. It all started with a silly question about who we might have chosen if we weren't with our current partners. I had said anyone, while everyone else named someone specific. The girls knew it would be our last trip together because Olivia was pregnant, and they thought it would be fun to give us a memorable summer holiday in Benidorm. I shook my head in disapproval and she kept going. It turned out that during our last day, the idea of swapping partners came up. The plan was to see who would be with whom, then let us guys know before changing rooms for a bit. I stopped her right there. Wait a minute. You never clearly told me you were going to be with someone else, did you? You knew how I would feel about that, so don't pretend otherwise. No, it was Olivia's job to ask you. While you were dancing, she wanted to know if she could be with you since I was with someone else. No way! Olivia didn't say anything to me. The closest it got was you talking vaguely about making it a special night. I thought you were just talking nonsense because you had been drinking. Where she had been confident before, my words seemed to shake her. I did tell you. You have to remember. I got ready to go and you said it was okay. Ashley, just think for a minute. I was asleep when you woke me up. You were talking about making it special, and I think I mumbled something about doing it in the morning. You know very well I meant us, Ash, not me and Olivia, and definitely not you and that jerk. But you agreed. Olivia asked you, and I told you. She was starting to sniffle, trying to hold back tears. I noticed my mom looking at me with a frown. I'm not going around in circles, Ash. No, I wasn't part of this crazy plan. I never agreed to any of it, no matter what you think. Now she was crying. How did I end up with Olivia anyway? I didn't choose anyone. Come on, Ashley, she's a few months pregnant. Why did this happen? Because you didn't name someone. She was the only one left, so she was willing to be with you. She said she would help you out if you needed it. I shook my head, unable to believe it. You all are messed up for doing that. You know me. Remember that show we watched about couples who share partners? I told you back then that the idea was disgusting. I said if you ever suggested something like that, I would be done with you. And yet you did it. You ruined our marriage for a mistake with a jerk. She replied firmly. I didn't ruin our marriage. You did when you got angry outside that bar. I thought you understood. You never stopped me from going to his room. This was so frustrating and we were getting nowhere. She thought I knew what would happen and nothing would change that. I pushed for more answers. What were those marks about? Some sort of sign? You say I knew, but you hid it from me. It seems like you knew I was in the dark. Because you fell asleep on Olivia. I was waiting for you to say you were sorry for not keeping your promise. When you didn't say anything, I started to worry you had too much to drink and needed to think. To show we weren't making it up, we all agreed to have a mark in a visible spot. One person didn't have one, but the rest of us did. When I told the others, they thought it was best to give us space until we got home and hoped you'd remember what was supposed to happen. I'm sorry to break it to you, but I thought you were angry with me. And when that guy smirked at me, I knew he thought he had been with you. What did you expect? Should I have congratulated him? No way, I was furious, and I still am. She started crying loudly and looked toward the conservatory doors where I saw my mom was walking over. Ashley shook her head. She wanted this matter to stay private. The big question. I never hurt you. I didn't hit you. Why did you lie? Why didn't you support me instead of trying to get me in trouble? That's not a nice thing to do, Ashley. She winced when I said that. I could tell she disliked that word. I let her think for a moment, waiting for her response. I'm sorry. You're right, you never hit me. I tried to pull you back. When I did, Mike tried to hit you but missed and hit me instead. That's when the cafe owner came out. You were the one throwing punches everywhere. People thought it was you, because everyone else was either down or moving away. Hannah never got hit. She just fell out of her chair and scraped herself. Anger bubbled up inside me. I struggled to hold it down. I needed to understand why I was left all alone in this situation. Why didn't you tell them what really happened? Why let me take the blame? When the police took you, we had just a couple of minutes to decide what to say. We thought it would be best to say that you started it because you couldn't handle what happened that morning. We said you lost control and hit me, while the others tried to protect me. That's what we decided together. We were afraid that if we went home together, you might start telling stories about all of us, and no one wanted to be seen badly, especially the guys. Please, Ashley, I didn't think you'd let me go to prison. I thought they would just keep you for a little while, maybe a day. That's what the others said. So there it was, the harsh truth. It was all about saving face, not wanting to be judged. Letting me take the blame meant they were all safe. I became the one everyone blamed, the husband who became the villain. My anger was intense, and I wanted to confront them all. Ashley saw how deep my anger ran, so she added another piece of information. You still haven't asked the question you should, Chris. I told you we said you went wild because of news you received. Don't you want to know what that news was? It's because you found out I was pregnant. I sat still, staring at Ashley, but I couldn't really see her. Being stuck in my situation, I could only piece together the bits of information in my mind. I wondered if there was something important I was missing, something that justified what happened, making me look like the real bad guy. Did Ashley leave me because she was afraid to be alone? Did my parents not come to see me because they might not have valid passports or didn't know where I was? I had come to terms with the fact that my friends were now going to be strangers, but returning home earlier that day made me realize that the hopes I had were just dreams. Now Ashley had shattered those hopes, and everything came crashing down around me. "Chris, you haven't said anything. Please talk to me." Then another thought hit me. I had made a joke that morning about morning sickness. Was she already expecting a baby then, but didn't know? When did you find out? Who else knows about this? Everyone knows. I tried to wait until you were out, but Emily told a friend, and you know how secrets go around here. I'm really sorry. Once it was out, others started to make it into a bigger story, saying it was the reason you lost it out there. It was no surprise that the landlord didn't want me in his pub. Not only was I going to be known as a bad husband, but also as the man who was upset about his partner's pregnancy. I understood now why my parents were so upset and wanted to avoid seeing me in our neighborhood. So where does that leave us? You were with an ex-friend, They are still your friends. They hope you will understand what happened. They forgive you. I looked at her in shock as she spoke and jumped up from my seat, raising my voice. Forgive me? What about what you've done? When did you find out? You never said anything. You were still drinking heavily. You couldn't have known that morning. You were looking for a quick excuse to tell the police. You didn't know Ash. Oh no, that could be his child. Please, tell me you and him were careful. I remember you were in the right time of your cycle. Please, no. Just looking at her face told me everything I needed to know. She hadn't been careful. Emily was on the pill, and we hadn't brought any protection, unless one of the others stepped in to help, which I really doubted. I lost it. You can't be serious! Suddenly my parents walked in, and my dad quickly interrupted my outburst. That's enough, Chris! We didn't raise you to act like this. It's not acceptable. Ashley, is this what happened when you told him in Benidorm? We didn't want to bring it up until you were here to understand everything. Son, Ashley is willing to give you another chance, to move past this. We know it's a lot to take in, especially the thought of becoming a father. Mom, Dad, this is important. When did she tell you she was expecting? Was it right when she got back? Please, it matters. Ashley spoke up. Please, honey, it doesn't matter. I kept my feelings to myself for a few days after we got back. There were too many bad things happening, and I didn't want to spoil the good news until things settled down a bit. You know the truth, which is why you panicked during our vacation. I stood there staring at the woman who said she loved me, but was clearly lying to both me and my parents. She had acted so well since we got back that they all believed her. Ash, I'm giving you one chance to save our marriage. You need to tell them the truth about what really happened. If you can't, it's over for us. Once you can, get a DNA test for the baby. She shouted back, No, it's our baby. How can you say something so awful? I won't do that. She began to cry hard, shaking her head. Then my mom suddenly spoke up. Get out of my house! I looked at my mom. I had never seen so much pain and anger in one person. My dad pointed toward the door, and I slowly walked that way. When he opened the door, he rested his hand on my shoulder. I just don't know what to think, son. I can't believe she would lie like this. But then there are those court papers. You should give your mom some time to calm down. She's worried all this stress might hurt Ashley and the baby. You didn't help things today. Your mom might cut ties with you if she loses that child, so please be careful. Dad, please try to see my side. I'm telling you the truth. No one mentioned a pregnancy in Benidorm. What if they had harmed me in that prison attack? Would Mom be happy blaming Ashley for my death? I sighed. Dad, I need you to believe me. I'm your son. I'm having a hard time, son. I really want to believe you, but you're the only one saying this. If you're right, then the lies will start to fall apart. I'll tell you this. Ashley didn't mention being pregnant when she first got back, which I found odd. She claimed there was too much bad news when they returned. All she said was that there had been a misunderstanding and that you had hit her. Once the pregnancy came up, it seemed to be because you were upset about it. I remember our talk before the trip. You asked me to find your Scalextric set because you wanted to play with it with your child. That doesn't sound like someone who would hurt his wife over news like this. But there are so many things going against your story. I'll talk to your mom. Where will you go now? I don't know, Dad. I was hoping to stay here since I can't go back home. She has shut me out of my bank accounts. Take my credit card. The PIN is 1519. Find a hotel to stay at for a few days, but don't go overboard, all right? Whatever you need, feel free to use it. Send me a message once you get a new phone and we can try to meet up, hopefully with your mom, and maybe she'll be more understanding. I hugged my dad and headed toward the shops. At Tesco, I took out £100 and bought a basic mobile phone. I saw a taxi company's number on the notice board, so I called one to take me to Ashford's Premier Inn, where I booked a room for 3 days. I charged my new phone after putting in the SIM card from my old one. I felt sore and exhausted. I hope to start fresh tomorrow. Lying on the bed, my body ached from the rough morning I had, and my mind was troubled thinking about my parents. What should I do now? My thoughts kept flipping between options. I could see how Ashley might have seen things as a misunderstanding, thinking I was okay with it, but that thought was quickly overshadowed by the promise we made to each other to be committed. Ashley and the others seemed to think that what happened in Benidorm somehow canceled our vows. If she hadn't surprised me with that news, considering all the lies they told to protect themselves while leaving me behind, I would have gone straight to a lawyer for a divorce. I remembered our talks over the past year and a half about baby names, nursery colors, and what schools we wanted our kids to attend. We had discussed so much and really looked forward to starting a family. Now there would be a child, but possibly not mine. My thoughts were stuck in a loop. I hoped my child wouldn't start life with single parents, but I couldn't imagine raising someone else's child. In the morning, I turned on my phone to find many messages waiting for me. A few people I knew had texted about needing to talk when I got back. There was one message from Ashley sent on the day everything fell apart. She didn't know my phone was broken. She told me she loved me, that it was a misunderstanding and we could sort things out in a couple of days when I returned home. I couldn't help but scoff. How do you fix the fact that your wife had been unfaithful and might be expecting a child? That thought troubled me greatly. Wouldn't the odds be in favor of it being my child? But the truth was, my wife had left me, lied to me, and left me to face difficult times alone. I felt lost, hoping that clarity would come, allowing me to make the right choices when the time came. I called the number Josh had given me before he left. Moments later, we were engaged in a deep conversation as we caught up. He was really concerned about me after his departure. His dad's lawyer had looked into my situation, but with my sentence nearing its end, they decided to let things play out. I told him about the cigarettes and how they helped me out, saying it seemed like his dad could see the future. He invited me to come down, and I said I would, but I needed to sort things out up here first. I wasn't even sure if I still had a job. I texted my dad, and he called me back. He had picked up my car from home along with a lot of my clothes, and he would bring it to me. He talked to Ashley about my bank cards being canceled. She was sorry and said she wasn't sure if they were safe after my arrest. She arranged for a new bank card for me and offered to take out some cash to help me. I asked my dad if she had given him the cash, but he said she wanted to talk to me directly about that. By the afternoon, I was feeling better. It was nice to have my phone and my car back. The next step was to check if I still had a job. The downside was that Rich worked there too, in sales. When I got to work, I was taken to see Dave Myers, one of the directors. I shared my side of the story and explained why I admitted my guilt. He even searched for my case online and agreed that if I had fought it, I might still be stuck in a Spanish jail. "Chris, you've always been a good employee here," he said. "Your wife came in the day you were supposed to return and explained that there had been a misunderstanding. She asked us to keep your job for you. Based on your work record, I supported you, but others weren't so sure. Word has gotten around. Someone found a copy of your court case in the break room. A memo went out making it clear that any crime would be dealt with by the court, and our company will not accept bullying in the workplace. It's going to be a tough road, Chris. Stay calm. Hopefully things will get better soon after you return to work. It's Thursday. Can you come back on Saturday? It's a half day, so that should help." I thanked him and shook his hand as I left his office. He was right. The receptionist gave me a harsh look when I walked in and out, so I knew this would be hard. My next problem was finding a place to stay. I couldn't afford to stay in the hotel forever. Before I left work, I gave Dave my new bank details to make sure my money was safe, so I opened an online account that morning. That evening, I got a message from Ashley inviting me to dinner on Friday night to have a calmer conversation. She ended the message with 3 little XXs. I needed the money, and I had my work clothes there too, so I agreed and asked her what time. When I woke up Friday morning, my thoughts from my first night at the hotel were still swirling in my mind. I decided it was time to take some steps, even if they didn't lead anywhere good. I went to see a lawyer to explore my options for divorce, just in case I needed to take that path. Things looked okay until I mentioned that my wife was pregnant. When the lawyer asked if I had anything else to share, I told him about my time in jail and why it happened. He shook his head slowly and warned me that it could cause big problems in front of the wrong judge. I might not come out well. I asked him if he could write a letter for me, thanking me for my visit and detailing the costs of working with him as a divorce lawyer. I wanted to use this to put some pressure on Ashley. I had a plan, but I needed something to help me. After paying £30, I left with a letter that didn't mean much. On Friday evening, I arrived at my old home. I rang the doorbell and Ashley answered. "You didn't need to do that, you could have." She paused, looking down, her face bright red. "I'm sorry, I forgot the locks were changed. It felt strange, you knocking." I chuckled lightly. "Yeah, it felt strange coming home to find the locks changed. I'm sorry, my parents wanted me to do that for my safety." "From who, Ashley? Only lovers get keys, not husbands." "Please, Chris, let's keep this civil. Instead of blaming each other, can we focus on what to do next?" She turned and went to the kitchen. After a month of prison food and then disappointing microwaved meals, the idea of a home-cooked dinner was tempting, even if the company was a bit awkward. I mentioned I needed to collect a few things for work, and she knew I was back in town on Saturday. Gossip spreads quickly. It was clear she had put in a lot of effort. Her dress was nice without being too revealing, and her makeup was subtle. I guess she didn't want me to say anything rude. The table was set for 2, making it feel like a special dinner. She had prepared good-sized steaks and a nice red wine that she knew I liked. The only thing she asked was that we save our conversation until after dinner. I was okay with that. It made sense not to ruin a nice meal. After we finished eating, I placed the letter on the table and opened it so she could see the letterhead. If she wanted to read it, I would let her. I hoped for the reaction I got. Her eyes widened in shock, and tears began to fall as she shook her head. In a quiet, shaky voice, she said, No, this isn't right. It's not what I want. I need you. You're my husband, and we're having a baby. We can't split up." I looked at her without showing any feelings. "If you really needed me, why didn't you speak up and stop me from going to jail? Why didn't you try to see me or reach out? You left me with nothing and changed the locks on our home. And why? Why did you betray us? You ruined our future." She started crying hard. I realized I had pushed her too far, digging up old wounds from earlier in the week. It still hurt a lot, and it wasn't going to go away quickly. My dad's words about stress and its consequences echoed in my mind. I stood up and put my arm around her. She held on to me tightly. "I'm sorry," she said through her tears. "I shouldn't have said that. Like you, I'm hurting too. I didn't mean to make things worse." Between her sobs, she spoke quickly. "I'm really sorry. If I had known this would happen, I would have convinced everyone not to go through with it. You seem to know everything, and I thought you were okay with it. Olivia even told you directly that—" She didn't say anything important, please. We've talked about this before. You need to believe me. I honestly didn't know. Maybe I could have figured it out at the bar, but we were all a bit out of it, and silly things get said that don't mean much. But I see now that they did mean something that night. I continued, "Do I want a divorce? Right now I'm not sure. But if we are going to try to work things out, we need to start fresh. I will let your past actions go for now. But you need to tell everyone that you didn't know about the baby when everything went down, and that I never hurt you. I don't care if you say you slipped instead of saying someone else caused it. If you agree to this, then we can talk about everything else." She nodded and slowly stopped crying, still holding on to me. Eventually, she went to the bathroom. After about 5 minutes, she returned, looking a bit more composed, though still not fully together. "I know this is tough," she said. "I hope things get better once we find a way to move forward. Are you okay right now?" She nodded. A moment later, her phone buzzed on the table, making noise repeatedly for the next several minutes. Finally, I asked her to turn it off or silence it since we were supposed to be having an important conversation. She glanced at her phone and I think she silenced it. Then, after a minute, she asked me to get her a glass of water. The kitchen was quite big. I walked to the sink and poured her a glass. As soon as I turned around, the last of them were leaving. I felt caught off guard and really upset about it. I showed that in what I said first. Well, looks like I've walked into a meeting for cheaters, or did you hand out keys to all your friends so they could just drop by? Rich spoke up. Calm down, please. Your girlfriend is pregnant. Yep, she is, but we don't know which one of your friends is the father. I glared at Jacob as I said this, but made sure to look at all the guys, since I had no idea who had been with Ashley. Chris, stop it. We messed up. We didn't realize you weren't aware of everything. Emily said this, and I sensed it was her idea. Aware? I was never aware. Just stop fooling yourselves. Brianna jumped in, sounding frustrated. But you knew. We told you when we were dancing. None of you said no. You must have been too drunk to remember. I looked at Olivia, who had a baby bump now. She was staring at her shoes. Olivia, come on. Tell me. When did you say anything? And what did you say? I'm listening. She stayed quiet, looking down. Olivia! My shout startled her. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry. I was supposed to tell you, but I just couldn't. I didn't feel pretty, and nobody chose me. I thought you'd say no if I asked. I couldn't handle that. I thought once we were together you might change your mind, but you were already asleep. So I just held you until Ashley came back. Seeing the others, I realized they were in shock. Olivia ran out crying, with Rich chasing after her. He paused at the door and shot a look back at me. You don't get it, Chris. She doesn't deserve this. As he left, I called after him. No, she doesn't, just like I didn't deserve a month in a Spanish jail. The others exchanged looks, and I felt like I was finally making progress. So there it is, the truth. I didn't know, and you all just let it happen. Ash grabbed my arm and cried, Please, Chris, stop. I'm sorry, she never told us she didn't tell you. Okay, I'll hold back for now, but I have one last question. Which one of you came up with this silly idea? My gaze moved between the women who remained. They all pointed to one person without saying a word. I should have known it was you, Emily. How does it feel to break up a home? She replied, irritated. I'm not a breaker of homes. It was meant to be fun. There was a reality show where friends traded places for a week. It was fun, and everything turned out okay. I wasn't going to listen to the nonsense coming from her. Come on, they're all scripted. It's about as real as watching cartoons. By the way, are there any shows about raising someone else's baby? That could be interesting, especially since your husband has gotten involved with someone named Ashley. I laughed a little. Honestly, I might actually watch that show. Just be quiet, Chris, Jacob interrupted. I picked up 2 steak knives from the table. I didn't plan to use them, but the angry looks from my 3 ex-friends showed things could get rough. They noticed the knives and stepped back. Listen up, everyone. This wasn't just on me. You all made mistakes and put the blame on me to hide the truth. Here's the deal. Change your story. You don't have to explain any details about the swapping thing, but you will say there was a misunderstanding that wasn't my fault. Ashley will admit she didn't know, and honestly, she might not even be pregnant if it's not mine. The girls just slipped. Unless you, Mike, want to admit you're the one who hurt Ashley. This whole situation was just a misunderstanding. And finally, you should not contact me or Ashley again. We need to stay a couple. And after this whole setup, that's hard. I want you all gone. But there's one more thing. If the baby turns out not to be mine when it's born, the real father and his wife will take it, and I want a legal document saying that in 30 days. Now leave. And by the way, if any of you have a key to my house, leave it on the table as you go. By now, the house was filled with crying women and angry men. If I hadn't been holding those knives, I'm sure things would have escalated. They all left, leaving a sad and broken Ashley with me. I was really upset that they had set me up, and just as upset that they had a key to my house, something I didn't have at the moment. I poured myself some wine, sat next to Ashley, and put my arm around her as her crying slowed to quiet sniffles. I'm sorry, Ashley. What did you think would happen when I met them? They ambushed me in my own home. When she turned to me, I saw a woman who felt completely lost. You didn't mean what you said. About the baby. It's ours and I won't give it up. Ash, we don't know whose it is. I'm serious. I will not raise someone else's child. I'll ask you again to get a DNA test as soon as you can. If not, we'll do it when the baby is born. If this baby is mine, I promise to be a father. If it's not mine, you can either give it to those two or raise it alone. There's no room for debate on this. I would prefer you decide quickly. It's your body and your choice. She held on to me tightly and began to cry. I know it's ours, Chris. Please believe me. I know my body. I wrapped my arms around her. I didn't want her to be upset. We just needed to find a way to manage this together. After a minute, I sighed, trying to believe we could get through this. I understood that they would never agree to any legal papers about the baby, but I needed to strengthen our position. We both need to set aside our pride. I have to accept that you broke your vows and what he did. We are both aware of the possible outcomes. I need to move back in, Ash. For now, I think I should stay in the spare room. You have a month to tell both of our parents the truth. I'll leave it up to you about how to handle things with, well, you know who. I'm very serious about the baby. If it's not mine, you will be doing this alone unless those two take it. Ashley shook her head, insisting the baby was ours. Eventually, we would find out who the real father was. That night, I slept on the sofa. I couldn't stand the thought of being in the spare room. I heard soft voices from upstairs. I figured her friends were checking if I was serious. Despite her asking me to come up, I stayed on the sofa, and she finally understood I was not joking. I had a restless night, wondering if I was making the right choices. At 6:30, my alarm rang, signaling it was time to get ready for work. Feeling unsure about what the day would bring, I soon left for work. When I got to work, nobody spoke to me. Those who looked my way showed me disdain. As I reached my workspace, I found a white tank top with the words "Wife Beater" printed on it and 4 cans of beer neatly placed on my bench. These items are often linked to drinking and domestic issues. The first thing I did was take a photo with my phone, then tossed the tank top in the trash and headed to the cafeteria with the cans. Rich was sitting with 3 of my supposed co-workers. The looks they gave me were anything but welcoming. At the sink, I opened each can and poured the beer down the drain. It wasn't my money after all. As I worked, I looked over at the table where they were sitting. They smiled and nodded at me. I focused on my tasks and went home without talking to anyone at work. Ashley was home. She still looked tired, but much better than before. I had taken one of the 2 keys left by the people who caused us trouble, and she told me that apart from her parents, no one else had keys. We planned to give the other spare key to my parents. She wanted to know if I was serious about what we talked about, and I told her yes, I truly was. She left a little later without telling me where she was going and got home close to 9 at night. Ash, if you want to fix things, I meant what I said. We need to cut ties with those people. No exceptions. We will find new friends. She looked disappointed. But they are our friends. We grew up with many of them. No, Ash, they aren't my friends. Those friendships ended a long time ago. I'll change my terms. If you really want to see them, you can go. But they cannot come to our home, and I won't go anywhere they are. If you spend time with them, you need to come home at a reasonable hour. I don't trust them. We need to rebuild our trust if this is going to work. She tried to convince me, clearly upset. Come on, Chris, think about our special occasions. You can't be serious. I am serious. If you go, you will go alone. I don't want them in my life. You're ruining everything. That was her reaction before she went to her room. In the morning, I had packed 3 bags and left them in the hallway. She rushed into the spare room, now my bedroom, and apologized, saying everything felt so sudden and she would try to accept it. I told her I understood. We both had to figure out how to move forward. Things settled down over the next 2 weeks. Our relationship changed. It felt more like we were siblings than a married couple living together. We tried to chat about life. When she asked how work was, I told her plainly that I wanted to look for a new job. I've been thinking, Ash. What do you think about moving far away to start fresh? At first, she looked shocked and didn't respond for a few minutes. As she served dinner, she finally spoke. If you accept that the baby is yours, drop the legal papers and tell the truth. I'll consider it. If we move, no one will know us, so the truth won't matter. It was tough to hear. She didn't want to make the changes that could help our marriage. My big hope was that she would be honest with our parents. If we could get through that, we could talk about what to do if the child wasn't mine. After thinking things over, adoption seemed like the only way to stay together. Losing my friends made me sad. To fill that gap, I started running after work in the evenings. I had always liked running, but I had not done it much in the past. Now, I was running between 7 and 10 miles every night. One evening at dinner, Ashley made a remark about my appearance. "All this running has really toned you up, Chris. You look great." "Thanks, Ash. I'm actually enjoying it. It's funny how I'm running by places I had forgotten about. These days, we tend to drive for even the shortest trips. It's like a trip down memory lane. I'm passing spots where we used to walk when we were in school." I smiled at my memories. Ashley tilted her head as she talked to me. Something nice is on your mind. You're smiling to yourself." "Yeah, you're right. I was just thinking about the first time I kissed you. Do you remember that?" She replied quickly. "How could I forget that?" This was fun, so I kept it going. "Okay then, where was it?" Ashley put down her fork and rested her chin on her hands as she closed her eyes, probably remembering the moment. "We had gone on a picnic. I was hoping you'd make a move, and then we were by the footpath near Taddington Woods where it felt safe. Then you just grabbed me and kissed me for the first time. I was so happy. For a little while. Do you remember what happened next?" Now she passed the question back to me, and I couldn't recall anything after the kiss. "All right, you're the smart one here. Please tell me what happened next." "There was a drainage ditch by the woods. As we were kissing, it felt like a swarm of mosquitoes attacked us." I laughed as I remembered. "Has it changed much? I can't remember the last time I walked there. Maybe we should retrace our steps, but without the mosquitoes this time." I nodded. This unexpected chat felt nice. It might seem small to someone else, but I believed we had a chance to fix things if we kept sharing moments like this. "It hasn't changed at all. It's part of my running route now. Let's plan to go there in a couple of weeks. If we keep this up, let's take this walk and see where it goes." We went back to our dinner, both smiling and feeling a little bit hopeful. A few nights later, I was out for a run. The days were getting shorter and autumn was almost here. I had my earbuds in and was listening to music, but my mind was elsewhere. I hadn't heard anything about the document I requested. I knew they probably wouldn't actually do it, but I wanted them to see I was serious about sharing the responsibility because I wouldn't be around if the child wasn't mine, and Ashley didn't want to go through with the adoption. For about half a mile, I ran along the path we had talked about a few nights before. I paid more attention this time. The woods were on one side with a drainage ditch next to them, and a field on the other. It looked just the same. The recent rain had made the plants grow a lot, and some bushes and trees were sticking out onto the path. Suddenly, I tripped over something and fell hard. As I tried to get up, I realized I had gotten caught in a piece of wire strung across the path. Then everything went black as something hit the back of my head. When I started to come to, the world was spinning and I could barely open my eyes. "Quick, untangle the wire and wrap the bushes around his feet." It was Rich's voice. I recognized it along with Carl and Jay, two of my co-workers. Someone kicked me to turn me over, and I felt myself slipping in and out of consciousness. I looked up and saw 3 people wearing masks. Rich said again, "You're not going to mess with anyone else's lives after today." I didn't know what happened next. I heard a dog barking nearby, and then someone shouted a warning. "Dog walkers, run!" Rich pushed me down the bank, and I rolled into the drainage channel, landing face first in the muddy water. I struggled to get out, feeling dizzy. Then I felt someone jump down and help pull me out. It was a couple walking their dog who had dragged me back onto the path. They were worried and wanted to take me to the hospital, but I said no. I asked if they could take me home instead. I wanted to clean up and have my wife help me. They spread a dog blanket in the back seat and drove me home. I asked for their contact details in case I needed help later. When I asked if they saw anyone else on the path, they said no, but they found it strange that a long piece of bush was on the path with no plants around. When they dropped me off, Ashley's car wasn't there, which didn't surprise me considering what happened. I took a quick shower, then gathered some clothes, toiletries, and personal items to put in my car. I had a big bump on the back of my head and several scrapes and cuts, especially around my ankles. These injuries felt small compared to what I thought those who hurt me had intended. While I showered, I considered going to the police, but I was sure that the 3 people I suspected could easily prove they were somewhere else, and one might even have my wife as an alibi. I realized I needed another plan. My phone was safe and dry in the running pouch on my arm. I sent a message, and within seconds, I got a reply telling me to hurry up because they were waiting for me. After taking some pain relief, I left my wedding ring and my door key on the table and traveled for 3 hours to Bournemouth. It felt like the right time to start fresh. I arrived at Josh's house just after midnight. We had an emotional reunion with hugs. He introduced me to his wife, Lauren. I apologized for surprising them, but Josh laughed it off, saying he owed me his life. He and his family were ready to help me in any way they could. After a nice chat, we decided to get some rest. The next morning, Josh wanted me to meet his dad, Derek. While I lay in the spare room, my phone buzzed with a message from Ashley. It was just past 1 in the morning. "Where are you? I'm worried. Your running clothes are all over the floor, and there is some blood in the bathroom. Why is your wedding ring here? Many of your things are missing. I'm sorry, they said they wanted to speak with you privately, so I told them where you ran. It was just a chat. Come home, please." I didn't reply and tried to sleep. In the morning, I left with Josh, who was really happy to see me. When we entered his dad's office, Derek gave me a big hug. "Chris, I've been wanting to meet you and thank you for helping Josh in Spain. We planned to visit you when things settled down, but here you are instead. I gather things have gotten quite messy back home." For the next hour, the three of us sat in his office while I shared everything that had happened since Josh's release from prison. Derek thought I should go to the police, but I was firm about not wanting to do that. He asked about my plans, and I told him I wanted to reset my life and start anew. Later, while I was in Josh's office, they invited me to stay for the day and offered me a chance to explore the dealership. The staff was informed to help me if I needed anything. About an hour later, I received a WhatsApp call from Dave Myers, and I thought he was calling to check why I hadn't gone to work. But it turned out to be more than that. It became clear that Derek and Dave knew each other from events in the car business. They weren't close friends, but they recognized one another. Derek had contacted Dave and explained where I was and what was going on. Like Derek, Dave wanted me to talk to the police, but I told him I had enough of that when I was in Spain. He asked me to send him the photo I took of the vest and beer cans when I got back, which I promised to do. He said he would take care of it. "Are you coming back to work, Chris?" Mike asked. "I'm sorry, Mike. I plan to leave the area for good." "No problem. My talk with Derek made it clear. I just wanted to confirm. I'll send a reference to Derek for their files. I'm sorry to see you go, but I understand. I hope things settle down and you find what you need." After the call, I asked Josh why his dad needed my references. He had a silly grin on his face. "Terry, our workshop manager, is very sick. They think it might be from asbestos in the old cars when he started in this line of work. His treatment starts soon. He's 58 and isn't sure he'll be back, even if he gets better. He's been told to focus on getting well. Until today, the plan was to have one of the other technicians fill in, but we're already short on good ones. After lunch, the directors want to meet you. They plan to offer you a short contract for Terry's role. This way, we can all see if we work well together, just in case Terry can't come back." By the time we left for Josh's house, my life felt like it had turned around. Suddenly, I had a new job that was a big step up, with a better salary. The 4 directors had a video call with Dave Myers, who supported their choice to hire me, saying they missed out on me in Kent but were lucky to have me here. They also decided to send my personal tools and things to my new workplace at their expense. We had a wonderful dinner. I had to give credit to Lauren. She was a great cook. She worked part-time for her dad, who owned an auto shop. That's where she met Josh. They shared a funny story about how everyone at work was guessing when Josh would get the courage to ask her out. In the end, she asked him out instead. Since then, they have been very happy together. Like me and Ashley, they were thinking about starting a family. I made a comment. "Hey, you're one lucky guy being with someone as amazing as Lauren." She blushed and laughed, shaking her head. Josh jumped in quickly. "I have to say, Chris, sometimes I can't believe I'm really married to this wonderful woman." We both looked at Lauren. She was red with embarrassment but smiling. She added, "Chris, compliments like that will get you far." "Dear husband, it's your job to tell me I'm smart and beautiful every day." Josh frowned playfully. "I never said smart." "No, but now you mention it." Josh rolled his eyes. I thought about the fun conversations with Ashley. It hurt because I knew we might never talk like that again. We chatted a bit longer. Again, I apologized for being a burden, but they wouldn't hear of it. Josh was sure that being in that situation brought our lives together, and he was thankful for it. I had to admit, it was a strange upside to a tough time. After a while, I excused myself and went to my bedroom. When I turned my phone back on, there were many missed calls and messages. Most were from Ashley and my mom, then a few from my dad. Before I could even start reading them, Ashley called. As soon as I answered, she started yelling before I could say anything. "You jerk! They're having a baby and your outburst yesterday got him fired. What's wrong with you? I hope you're proud. Where are you? You haven't answered your phone all day and your mom and dad are upset. As for me, I'm gone." I ended the call and put my phone on silent. An hour later, I saw there were 20 missed calls. Again, most were from Ashley and my parents, but there was one more, Olivia. I had blocked everyone else, but I couldn't do that to her. I owed her an apology for being too harsh with her a couple of weeks ago. She hadn't spoken up when things got out of hand, and I knew she was more shy than I was. I sent her a message. "I'm really sorry, Olivia. You don't deserve this, but it has gone too far now. I apologize if I was too harsh. You must understand how I felt. I don't blame you. You're just caught in the same situation as I am." I saw that she read it, but there was no reply. I messaged Ashley to say I would talk to her if she stayed calm. A few minutes later, she called. I could hear her taking deep breaths, clearly trying to hold back. This time, I spoke first. "I did not get that idiot fired. He got off easy. It could have been much worse." Her response was filled with surprise. "What do you mean, worse? Why would talking to you lead him to trouble? Is that what they told you? They wanted to talk? If knocking me out and leaving me in a ditch is a conversation, then I want no part of it." I could hear her breathing change, and the tone in her voice shifted. There was surprise in the air. No, they told me it was just a talk. You must have turned against them again. If setting a trap to trip me and then hitting me was me fighting back, then maybe I did. But I don't see it that way, and I doubt the police would either. Since when do people wear a mask for a chat? I believe they wanted to keep me quiet for good. Honestly, Chris, they said, "Stop, Ashley, it doesn't matter." I don't know anything about being let go, but I had a chat with Dave Myers earlier. He clearly took it seriously and has acted on it. But Rich said you got him fired. How will you face everyone at work when you finally return? And where are you? I can see why you would be upset, but leaving your wedding ring on the table, that's hurtful. Plus, your mom is really mad at you for that. I realized she misunderstood my leaving my wedding ring and the missing items. I wanted to be careful as I responded. My coworkers have no problems with me. In fact, they are eager for me to come to work tomorrow. That's not what Rich said. He mentioned that 2 technicians have been suspended for a week, and he said you will pay for all this. Just wait and see. Chris, please come home. We need to discuss this and sort it out together. I'm not sure where you are staying. Your car wasn't at the hotel, so you must be somewhere else. I scoffed, loud enough for her to hear. Ashley, I'm done. I don't work there anymore. I'm not in Beckstone, and I have no plans to return. I heard her take a quick breath. But what about me and our baby? This is your home. I'm your wife. I paused for a moment, listening to her breathing. When I spoke, my voice was soft, as she clearly hadn't grasped what had happened. Ashley, I've left you. Leaving my wedding ring should have made it clear what that meant. I tried to reach out when I came home to fix things. Yes, it was tough, but you didn't listen. You chose to side with them, knowing they would ambush me. It doesn't matter if they said it was just a talk. You keep putting them before me, before us. I'm sorry. I said our marriage was hanging by a thread, telling them where I was cut that thread, and now our marriage is over. I could hear her starting to cry, her voice weak as she tried to speak. Please, Chris, no. I want our marriage. I wasn't on their side. They said everything could be fixed if they spoke to you. All I want is to return to normal, to love you, and to have you love me and our baby. I'll do anything. I'll stop seeing them and talking to them. Please, Chris. I'm begging you, just come home. I need you. It was all a terrible mistake. Suddenly, it sounded like she dropped the phone. I shouted for her, but there was no answer. I hung up and called my dad, asking him to come over quickly since I was far away. I sat on the bed watching my phone and tapping my feet. 30 minutes later, my dad called me, but it was my mom on the other end, and she was very upset. Are you proud of yourself now? Your wife is on her way to the hospital saying you've left her. Is that true? You need to come home now and talk to us. Stop causing all this pain." A tear slipped down my face at my mom's words. How could she turn against me? Why wouldn't she support me in this? I spoke quietly before hanging up. "I love you, Mom. Maybe one day you'll see the truth. I'm gone from your life now. You won't have to feel embarrassed about me in front of the neighbors. If that child is mine, I will do my best as a father, but as a single one. Ash and I are finished. It's over. When she feels better, tell her my lawyer will reach out. I suggest she finds one for the divorce." I shut off my phone and turned it off. All I could do was sit on the bed and stare at the wall. A little while later, there was a knock on the door. I said, "Come in," and Lauren walked in with a cup of tea. She set it on my bedside table and gave me a hug. I rested my face on her head. Just feeling the warmth of someone else made me feel a little better. I tried hard to stay calm. I didn't want to burden her. She left me alone, and I couldn't sleep well that night. I focused on my new job and the need to find a place to stay. For the rest of the week, I dived into learning about my new company. I reviewed the important policies and made sure to get to know the staff. I thought someone might be upset about me taking the role, but it turned out that most were happy with their jobs and didn't want the extra stress. I connected well with Terry, and I felt sorry for his situation. At the end of the week, he told me he wasn't sure if he'd return if his treatment worked, but he felt I was the right person for the job. It was a great week, and his kind words on Saturday really lifted my spirits. I got invited out Saturday night with some of the other single guys. I had never been to Bournemouth before and was surprised by how lively the nightlife was. It was a popular spot for holidaymakers, and it also attracted many groups celebrating. As the night went on, I found myself dancing with several women. I noticed a group celebrating a friend's upcoming wedding, and the bride Toby approached me for a dance. One dance led to 2, then 3. Then she surprised me by asking something unexpected. "Would you come back to my hotel with me? My friend said I should do something fun before I get married. I wanted it to be with someone nice, someone who would treat me well." We left the dance floor and her friends cheered us on. Outside, she seemed shy and looked down at the ground. I gently lifted her chin to meet my gaze. "It's strange," I said. "My soon-to-be ex-wife had friends like yours. Their influence really hurt my marriage. I can see you might not be sure about this. Don't let your friends decide for you. Do what feels right. If you go through with this, it might follow you into your marriage." She suddenly started to cry and hugged me tightly. Her friends had been encouraging her all week to go out with a bang, but she wasn't ready for it. She thanked me for helping her find the courage to stay true to herself. Before running back inside, she gave me a quick but heartfelt kiss, her cheeks bright red. I felt a smile creep onto my face. While I couldn't fix my own marriage, maybe I could help her in some way. I found a taxi and went back to Josh and Lauren's place. After staying there for a few weeks, Derek and his wife Cindy invited me to join the family for Sunday dinner. I happily accepted as I enjoyed their company. I met 2 more family members, Josh's older sister Jess and her 5-year-old son. I recalled Josh mentioning a troubling situation involving her ex-husband who was currently in prison. Josh never explained much, and I respected that. When Jess was introduced to me, she looked down, avoiding eye contact. I initially thought she was acting standoffish, but as the afternoon continued, I realized she was just trying to protect herself, likely because of past experiences. I would ask Josh or Lauren about it later. On the other hand, her son Noah was full of energy, a lively little boy. It made me think of how my aunts used to say I was just like him. Later in the afternoon, we went outside. The weather was unusually warm for the season. They had a nice garden with a couple of small football goals. Before long, Noah asked his granddad to play a game, excited because there were enough of us to join in. Since Cindy had a leg issue, she couldn't play, but my presence helped us form a team of 3 on each side. 5 minutes later, Noah had organized the teams. It was Josh, Lauren, and Derek against Noah, Jess, and me. Noah named himself captain and put Jess in goal. Derek asked Cindy, who was enjoying her drink, to be the referee. Each half lasted 10 minutes. We were having a great time, and I could even see Jess smiling now and then. At halftime, we took a break to refresh ourselves. After Noah finished his drink, he pulled on my arm to go kick the ball around. I picked up the ball and showed him how to keep it in the air by gently kicking it before it landed. Noah tried, but like many kids, he got frustrated quickly. In the end, I dropped the ball for him to kick, and sometimes I caught it, which felt like a win for both of us. For the second half, Noah wanted to be in goal since we were 1 goal behind. With Derek in goal, it was Jess and me against Josh and Lauren. That's when I noticed a more competitive side in Jess and Noah. The girls encouraged Josh and me to play harder against each other, and we did the same when it was the girls' turn. Cindy said there was only a minute left, and we were winning 4-3. Josh tried to lift the ball over us toward the goal. I stood in front of the goal while Jess quickly walked backward, trying to catch the ball. At the last moment, she turned to run and accidentally bumped into me, and we both fell, with Jess landing on top of me. She looked down at me, and I could see a bit of uncertainty in her eyes. Just then, Noah came over holding the ball. "Look, I saved it! They didn't score! We won!" he exclaimed. A small smile appeared on Jess's face as she looked directly at me and said, "I think you're right, Noah. We might just be the winners here." She got off me and offered her hand, helping me up. I saw that smile again. Noah lay on the sofa and soon dozed off while we chatted. A hot topic was how my first few weeks had gone. We talked about my plans, and I mentioned looking for a place to stay, ideally with a 6-month lease. Josh and Lauren insisted I could stay with them for as long as I needed. Suddenly, someone surprised me with a solution. "I have a 5-bedroom house that's too big for just me and Noah. Come and live with me. I have 3 extra bedrooms, and it would be nice to have some company," someone said. A quiet moment filled the room. I glanced at Cindy and Derek and noticed a sly smile on Derek's face. I could feel everyone's eyes on me. "I don't know. I might be a dangerous person out here," I joked. Lauren jumped in quickly. "Jess, he really might be. I saw him eat a whole bowl of cornflakes like it was nothing." This got a few giggles, but soon the talk turned serious. By the time we were heading back to Josh and Lauren's place, I was getting ready to leave in a couple of days, depending on how Jess felt about me staying at her home. I planned to visit after work the next evening. The day felt like a blur. Terry had 1 more day until he started his treatment, so I focused hard on my tasks. I was thankful everyone around me seemed to care. They wanted things to work out just as much as I did. Around midday, I got a message from Jess. She said I could bring my things over and stay if I wanted, and dinner would be ready, giving Lauren and Josh a nice moment together. She asked if fish fingers were okay. I replied with a fun emoji to show I was excited. Fish fingers. I hadn't had them since I was about 15. When I arrived at her house, it was a nice modern place in Christchurch. There were good cars parked nearby, so I guessed the area was well off. As I drove up, Jess opened the door and was holding back Noah. As soon as I stepped out, she let him go and he rushed over, thrilled to see me like it was a big celebration. I left my suitcases by the car and grabbed a bunch of flowers and a package from the passenger seat. As I walked in, Jess thanked me and blushed when I handed her the flowers. Once inside, she went back to cooking. I asked if I could give Noah the package and she nodded. He excitedly opened it and started bouncing around in joy. I had researched toys for playing keepy uppy. There was a fun harness that came with a small soccer ball. 5 minutes later, Noah was wearing the harness and kicking the ball. After one broken decoration, Jess decided it was an outdoor toy only. He dashed out to the garden as she prepared to serve dinner. I expected frozen fish fingers, but she had not been completely honest. These were homemade with fresh fish and breadcrumbs. They were delicious. As we ate, it seemed like she was caught between 2 feelings I had noticed before. The main side I saw was one of someone who felt hurt, but there were hints of a happier person inside, waiting to come out. After dinner, we tidied up while Noah went back to the garden to play with his new ball. About 30 minutes later, he came back in as it began to get dark. He excitedly led me on a grand tour of the house, with Jess adding in important details along the way. Somehow, she didn't think finding the PlayStation games was as important as having clean bed sheets and towels. After that, we went back downstairs, still excited that I was staying. Jess let Noah play a PlayStation game with me for 30 minutes before getting ready for bed. We got really into playing FIFA 22. When Jess told us to stop, Noah rolled his eyes and looked at me for support. I didn't want to create any trouble. "Noah, when your mom says time's up, we need to follow the rules." "Oh, aren't you the boss?" My dad always said he was the boss, and everyone, even my mom, had to listen to him. I glanced at Jess. She was staring at the floor. It seemed like a sensitive topic, so I tried to make things better. Noah, only your mom is the boss in this house. My mom taught me to respect her, so I always listened to what she said. This is your mom's house, and she is in charge here, just like my mom was in charge in my home. We both have to do what we are asked. Oh, I get it. Kind of like my grandma and grandpa. Jess looked up and smiled a little. Yes, just like that. Now both of you, please put the PS5 and games away, then go upstairs, brush your teeth, and get ready for bed. Noah giggled. Yep, Mom's the boss now. I laughed. Jess talked to both of us like we were kids. Maybe she thought I would be a good playmate for Noah. I almost expected to have a lunchmate in a Star Wars lunchbox waiting for me in the morning. I realized I hadn't even brought my bags in from the car yet. Shaking my head and smiling, I helped Noah clean up while Jess watched us with a bemused look. As she got Noah ready for bed, I went to fetch my bags from the car. As I walked away, I thought about how I came here as a guest, but it felt different, like something else. To add to this feeling, Jess made a playful comment. Oh, this is going to be a lot of work, isn't it? Please tell me I'm not going to be sharing a house with a couple of energetic kids. Again, there was that smile. I hoped to see more smiles as time passed. Before I went to bed, I asked if it was okay for me to have a key. Sorry, Chris. I didn't think of that. There's a spare one in the top drawer by the front door. When I opened the drawer, I couldn't see much because there was a photo frame lying face down. I pulled it out and turned it over. It showed Jess, and I guessed it was her ex-husband. I stood there looking at it, not noticing Jess come into the hallway. She spoke, and I could see the sad look on her face was gone. That's my wedding day. I looked so happy there, and honestly I was. But everything changed. I got rid of every other picture of him except this one in case Noah ever wants to see what his dad looks like. She sighed and continued. I thought I had it all. A caring husband, a nice home, a good job, and both of us wanting kids. But I didn't really know him well. As our marriage continued, he became controlling, a bit rude, and extremely jealous. You heard Noah mention it earlier. He often said things like, I'm in charge, I decide everything. When we went out together, he wanted me to dress nicely, and then would complain if he thought I was being friendly with others. I just wanted to be a good wife, that's all. In the end, things got so bad that he ended up in prison. I believe he deserves to be there. My only regret is not leaving sooner instead of waiting for things to get better. I hope he faces the consequences of his actions. I noticed she was getting emotional as she quickly took the photo from me and put it back in the drawer, shutting it tightly. She placed the keys on top of the drawer and walked away quickly. I was curious about what had happened, and I thought that one day she might share the whole story. The next morning, though, it was like nothing had happened, and life went on. At work, I asked Josh what had gone on with Jess and her ex-husband. He said it was her story and that one day she might talk about it. The family had never gone into detail, and it had been a hard court case. Her ex-husband was facing serious accusations, including significant abuse. I was surprised when Josh told me that he would be gone for 15 years. It must have been very serious. Over the next couple of months when I was out with Noah, people often thought I was his father. Our bond felt strong right away, and I could tell he liked it. Honestly, I did too. I made sure Jess was included. When Noah wanted to see a football game between Bournemouth and Arsenal, the three of us went together. It turned out that neither of them had been to a professional football game before. During halftime, the camera showed the crowd and we suddenly appeared on the big screen. Noah jumped up and waved his arms. The commentator said, "There's one happy family." This changed everything going forward. As we walked home after the game, Noah was super excited. We joked about whether he was thrilled to be on the big screen or just happy about the match itself. Jess said the commentator was right. We looked like a great family together. For the first time, she linked her arm with mine as we strolled home. That evening, Jess surprised Noah by saying that Grandma Cindy and Grandpa Derek wanted to see him and hear all about the game. She asked if I could take him over while she prepared dinner. When I got to Derek and Cindy's, they greeted me warmly. It still felt strange, but they treated me like I was family. Just before I left, Cindy pulled me aside. "I've never thanked you, but thank you for helping my children. You'll always be good in Josh's eyes, but please, I ask you, if you think you might go back to your ex-wife, don't get too close with Jess. She needs care right now." I understand, Cindy. I promise I haven't done anything wrong. I haven't made any advances, and I don't want to cause any trouble. Josh told me her husband was not nice to her, and I remember that. It's similar to the false claims that have been made against me. I stopped Josh from getting hurt, but I haven't done anything for Jess. She smiled and gave me a gentle kiss on the cheek. You don't see what I see, but you've helped Jess more than any doctor could. Please, for both of us, take it easy with her. She might struggle to recover if things go wrong again. With that, I left, feeling a bit confused. Was it obvious that I was starting to like Jess? I wondered if it was just a passing feeling because I was lonely and Jess was there. Other than her linking her arm with mine as we walked home from football earlier, I hadn't noticed any clear signs from her. I would talk to Lauren next time I saw her. She would surely know what I was missing. As I opened the door, a delightful smell from spices and herbs led me into the kitchen. There were pots and pans cooking, which was usual, even though Jess had made a joke about fish fingers when I first met her. She was a great cook, but something was different. Jess was dressed in a way I hadn't seen before. Since I met her, she usually wore casual clothes like joggers, jeans, long skirts, and loose tops. Now she had on an apron over a little black dress, black tights, and kitten heels. Jess's black hair was loosely pinned up and she wore makeup. Normally it was very light, almost as if she wasn't wearing any at all. But tonight her makeup was a bit more noticeable, highlighting her natural beauty. I had noticed this the first time we met. Are you expecting someone tonight? I asked. She stopped cooking, looking quite nervous, and I sensed a hint of fear. Yes, I am. I have a date. I hope that's all right. That surprised me. I hadn't seen it coming. Oh, I'm sorry. You should have told me. I would have made plans to be out of the way. Let me change and I'll leave you in peace in 10 minutes. She stood still, looking at me. When she spoke, her voice was soft. My date is here, unless he doesn't want to be. She took a deep breath and held it in, tears building in her eyes. I realized she was afraid of being turned down by me. Her mom's earlier comment made sense now. I felt foolish. Jess, I'm such an idiot. Of course I'm happy to be here with you. You've gone to so much trouble. Let me change into something nicer for our evening. She sighed with relief, the stress leaving her body as she visibly relaxed. Most importantly, she smiled. Noah had stayed with his grandparents before, and we had acted normally like he was at home. Tonight felt very different. As Jess finished cooking, I quickly showered and put on clothes that felt special for us. I felt a bit nervous. The last date I had been on was years ago with Ashley. As we sat together, we both felt a little anxious, even though we were getting comfortable around each other. Looking at Jess, it really felt like a date. I needed to start acting like it. I took a breath to gather my courage. I feel like a very lucky guy tonight. When my friend Josh got engaged, he used to pinch himself to check he wasn't dreaming. I guess I need to do the same now because you look amazing, Jess. She smiled at the compliment. Well, Chris, for a lodger, I have to say, you clean up nicely. I bet there are lots of single women in Bournemouth who would love to be in my place right now. Feeling a bit proud, I grinned and replied softly, Well, they are out of luck. I'm here with the most beautiful woman in Bournemouth, and I'm not going to let that go. Jess blushed and looked away with a playful smile before she responded. We should eat this meal. If you keep flattering me, I might end up reheating the food here at the table instead of going to the kitchen. I raised an eyebrow at her words. So, I'm making you feel flustered? Just sitting here admiring you is having a similar effect on me. Jess's face turned even redder as she laughed, covering her face with her hands. No, that came out wrong. I meant that you make me blush. It's just my face getting warm, not... Oh, you know what I mean. I looked at her closely. That's too bad because I really meant what I said. Jess peeked at me through her fingers, and I was smiling at her. We both burst into laughter. Throughout dinner, we chatted, sharing light, playful conversation that made us both feel good. After we finished our meal, we went to the lounge. I asked Jess about cleaning up, but she said it could wait. She wanted our first official date to be special. In the lounge, she stopped and turned to me. I noticed she looked a bit scared. I walked up and stood in front of her. Jess, I know you've been hurt before. We're both navigating something new here. Let's take things at your pace. With that, she wrapped her arms around my neck and we slowly leaned in for a kiss. It started gently, but soon we were kissing more passionately. After a moment, we pulled apart and she smiled. That was worth the 3 years of waiting, Chris. We put on some soft music and spent the next hour sharing sweet moments and slow dancing. She seemed relaxed, but when I reached to unzip her dress, she tensed up. I stopped right away. She pulled me close and whispered, "I'm sorry, Chris. I'm not ready for that yet. I want to be open, but I need to overcome my fears." I didn't say anything. I just held her close. She relaxed again. We watched a movie that didn't really matter to me. From the moment I met Jess, I saw the beautiful person behind her strong exterior. Part of that beauty was her love for Noah. Tonight, for the first time, I saw the real Jess. I realized my feelings for her had grown stronger than I had admitted. I hadn't realized she felt the same way. Eventually, we went to our separate rooms and we didn't talk about it. If things were meant to grow, I was fine to let them unfold naturally. Later, I rolled over and was surprised to see Jess beside me, looking at me with a smile in the dim light. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to wake you. I was in my bed, but I wanted to be here with you, so I crept in a little while ago. Watching you sleep helps me feel at peace." As she said this, she moved closer, and our lips met again. I felt her gentle warmth, and my hand found its way to her shoulder. I suddenly felt a flutter in my stomach like butterflies. It reminded me of how I felt years ago when I was first close to someone. Back then, it was two people unsure of what they were doing, learning from their first experience. Now, it was two adults who understood that it was about sharing a connection. I gently moved my hand down her arm and across her side. She tensed for a moment, so I paused. "At any point, just say stop. This is about what you want. Just being here with you is enough for me." She pressed her lips against mine suddenly, silencing me as she gently pushed me onto my back. She sat up wearing a delicate black nightdress. Holding my arms above my head, she leaned in to continue kissing me, her touch warm and gentle. I moved my arms free and placed my hands on her waist, slowly sliding them upwards. One of her hands rested on mine and guided it back down, signaling that she wasn't comfortable with me going further in that direction. I respected her unspoken boundary and kept my hands on her waist, outside of the nightdress. As we continued, I gently traced my hands along her back, while she kissed me softly. After a while, she sat up again, and I could see a mix of emotions on her face, nervousness and uncertainty. She smiled softly before speaking. "I'm not perfect, Chris. You know that, right? A few years ago, I promised myself that no one would ever get close to me like this again. The thought used to make me feel so uneasy. But here I am, with you. I guess love can change things, huh?" I realized what she was trying to say, even if she couldn't say it directly. I wanted to put her at ease, so I spoke from the heart. "I've tried to ignore my feelings, Jess, but over these past months, since I moved in, my life has felt more complete than ever. Both you and Noah have become a part of me in ways I didn't expect. If you're not ready, that's okay. I don't want to rush things and risk what we have. It'll happen when it's meant to. But I need you to know, I've fallen in love with you." She smiled warmly, understanding my words. Then, with a steadying breath, she leaned down. "Chris, this is the right time, and I want this now." She guided me closer, and together we moved in sync, sharing a quiet and tender moment. It was about connection, trust, and mutual understanding. She closed her eyes, and I saw her body tense up. I almost stopped her, but she sensed it. "Please, Chris, just lie there and let me handle this. It's really hard for me, but I want to get through my fears. Most of all, I want to share this moment with you." With my hands on her waist, she began to move. Her eyes stayed closed as the rhythm picked up, and our breathing changed too. I let my hands slide up her sides, feeling the way she moved. A soft sound of satisfaction slipped from her lips. She continued for several minutes, changing the rhythm now and then, even pausing at one point. Whenever she opened her eyes, she didn't look directly at me. It felt strange, but I understood that this was how she reacted. As the pace quickened, I realized I wouldn't be able to hold back for much longer. "Jess, I'm close," I said, feeling overwhelmed. She interrupted me, almost breathless. "It's fine, Chris. I'm okay, and I want this." That made me lose control, and I felt a rush of emotion. She was still there with me, moving gently. I could sense everything around us. In that moment, she leaned down and kissed me deeply. Her eyes were wide open and looking into mine. As we slowed down, my body relaxed. Suddenly, she started to shake. She stopped kissing me and rested her head on my shoulder. Tears began to stream down her face as she began to cry. I held her close, kissing the side of her head. I knew she had been through a lot, and our connection revealed her struggles. I recognized it and would do what I could to help her face her fears. If she couldn't, I accepted her as she was. I had fallen for her without even realizing it. As she calmed down, she moved off me and lay on her side. "I'm sorry, Chris. All my fears, worries, and relief came out at once. I've only talked to a therapist about what happened in the past. It was so hard and I still have nightmares, but you have given me hope. My heart felt empty except for my love for Noah, but when we played football that day we met, a light came into my heart. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel scared of a man. There was something about you, something special. When I'm ready and able, I'll share my story with you." We shared a few more kisses, and it felt like one of us was holding back. "Jess, do you want me to be with you again? I mean, you didn't." A finger touched my lips, telling me to stop. "Save it, my dear. That was something I haven't felt in a long time. All I can say is, things will get better, and there's a lot for us to discover together." We lay in each other's arms, feeling the warmth between us. After a few minutes, her breathing became steady. A quick look at her face showed she had fallen asleep. I wondered what worries haunted her. I hoped that as we continued to grow closer, she would let me in completely so I could understand and support her. I felt happy and at peace. Surprisingly, I didn't feel guilty, even though I was still married. Instead, I felt a sense of belonging. We stayed in bed until 10 in the morning, then got ready to visit her parents. In less than a day, everything had changed between us. As we left, she kissed me softly on the lips before we got in the car. She wore a dress that fit her well, and her makeup was lovely, with red lipstick that matched her dark hair and fair skin. When we arrived, she held my hand as we walked to the front door. "Jess, don't do this for me. I'm not. I'm doing this for myself, for us. I'm feeling good about this, so don't overthink it." Derek reached the door before Jess could open it. His face lit up with a big smile. Suddenly, Noah squeezed between us, wrapping an arm around each of our waists. It hit me I now had a family. At dinner, everyone was smiling at us. When I glanced at Jess, she was bright red. She turned to the table and asked, "What?" Lauren quickly replied, "It's about time." The four of them chuckled, clearly enjoying our awkwardness. Soon, 5-pound notes were being passed down the table to Cindy. It seemed strange that we all were contributing for something, and I pulled out a $5 from my wallet. Josh laughed and shook his head. "Not you two. You weren't part of the bet." "What bet?" I spoke before thinking, and soon I was feeling embarrassed. Lauren then pointed out, "My 5 was on last weekend, but Cindy said it would be this one, so she collects." Jess turned even redder as she replied, "But we haven't said anything." Cindy ended it with a laugh. "Your faces say it all. You might as well have walked in with a big sign and a band announcing, 'Yes, we did it. We're together now.'" As things settled down, Noah realized that something important had happened. When he saw us holding hands at the table, he ran over and gave me a fist bump. "See, I told you, Granddad, Chris is going to be my new dad. Dad." For the first time ever, someone called me Dad. My feelings surged up like a wave, and I turned my head slightly, trying to hold back tears. Noah noticed right away and looked like he might cry too. Just before he let it out, he asked me, "Don't you want to be my dad, Chris?" I gave him a big hug and told him that sometimes people cry because they are so happy. That's how I felt right then. Jess reached over, wiped a tear from my eye, and we shared a happy moment together. By the time we got home, it was much later than usual. After helping Noah settle into bed, we curled up together on the sofa. My phone buzzed with a message, and after reading it, I passed my phone to Jess. "So, you're hiding in Bournemouth. I'm guessing that's your girlfriend and her child?" The message was from my dad, who was the only one with my new number. He also sent a picture from yesterday's game. "Call him and let him know about us. They need to hear it from you. They might accept that it's over between you and Ashley," Jess suggested. I called him, and soon my uncle, a big Arsenal fan who was there yesterday, answered. I told him yes, Jess and Noah were my family and we were living together. He let out a sigh. Your mom is sure you'll return to Ashley. She keeps telling Ashley that too. I want you to be happy, Chris. You looked happy in that photo. I have some questions. Is it really over with Ash? What if the child is yours? And is this new woman serious? It seems fast. You haven't even started the divorce yet. Dad, I've got Jess here with me on speaker. If the child is mine, I'll be the best dad I can. But it's over with Ashley. There's no turning back, it's just not happening. I haven't filed for divorce yet because my lawyer advised waiting until the baby is born to establish paternity. After that, I'll be filing, unless Ashley does it first. As for Jess, it's still new for us. Neither of us expected to find each other, it just happened. Jess and Noah are the good things that came from my tough time. I'm happy, but I promise I won't ignore my responsibilities if that baby is mine. Jess kissed me on the cheek, and we sat quietly, waiting for my dad to respond. I knew he wouldn't rush his thoughts. He was thinking about what I had just told him. All right, son. I will let your mother know you contacted me. I will try to help her understand that it is over between you and Ash, but I doubt she will accept that. Jess, I'm sorry this is the first time we are talking. Still, thank you for bringing some joy back into my son's life. If that picture says anything, that phone call strengthened our bond. It gave Jess the comfort that I had been honest about my feelings. Everything seemed to be getting better. I did have some money troubles trying to balance my expenses, including my mortgage and bills back home as the lawyer had advised. I used Jess's family's information to keep my location private. Jess assured me not to worry about her bills. They were all taken care of and would be for a long time because of funds from her divorce. My connection with Noah felt like a blessing. He was happy to call me Dad, even in front of his friends. Jess helped him see that he had a real dad. She used one of his friend's situations, explaining that even though that Dad was away, they might meet when he grew older. Noah seemed content with that. A month later, my dad messaged me asking me to call him right away. When we spoke, he shared the sad news. Ashley's parents had died in a car accident on their way to their home in Spain. Their car had crossed the road and crashed into a truck. The report showed that Ashley's dad had a heart attack and likely didn't survive the crash. I sent Ashley a card to express my sorrow. The funeral was set for 3 weeks later. Dad asked me to make an effort because Ashley was still considered my wife, and he mentioned she was having a tough time. I kept thinking about whether I should attend the funeral. In the end, Jess suggested I should go to show my respect and support for Ashley and my family. She came with me back to Kent, but we stayed in Maidstone, away from my old neighborhood. The night before the funeral, we met Dad for a quick drink. He left early to avoid drawing attention. Ashley was staying with my parents. Dad asked if I would be there for Ashley during the funeral. I hesitated, but Jess told him I would support her. She held my hand. It would be difficult for both of us, but we would manage. Jess dropped me off down the road from my parents' house and headed to the Ashford Outlet Center. She thought some shopping might help her cope with the day. I offered to help her with some money, but she turned it down, saying everything was already taken care of. All she really wanted was a night full of love and happiness. When I entered my parents' house, my mom stood there looking at me with a frown. I opened my arms for a hug. She came to me and hugged me tightly, and I could feel her crying against my chest. "I've missed you, Mom." Hearing that made her cry even more, and she held me even closer. After a moment, she stepped back and wiped her tears. Then she took me to the sunroom. Ashley was sitting there, and it was clear that her pregnancy was showing. She started to get up, but I signaled for her to stay seated. My parents took 2 chairs, so I ended up sitting next to Ashley. As soon as I sat down, she burst into tears. Jess had told me to be there for her, but to set some boundaries if I needed to. I reached over to her and took her hand. She looked at me as I spoke. "I'm really sorry for your loss, Ashley. They were good people. I'm here for you today because I know you need support. Does this mean you're back in my life?" Her eyes held a bit of hope, but I could see she was afraid it wasn't true. "I'm sorry, Ashley, but I've moved on. Any hurt or blame from the past has faded away. It was a tragic mistake, and we should both learn from it. I don't hate you. There's still some care for you in my heart, but that's all that's left, and it won't change." She wrapped her arms around my neck, and her crying grew stronger. I gently held her. When I glanced at my mom, I saw a look of disapproval. Maybe she thought this was her last chance to get me and Ashley back together. The funeral was unusual. In their will, they asked to be cremated together if they passed away around the same time. They got their wish. Their ashes were placed in a special casket meant for both of them. I stayed with Ashley the whole time, holding her hand as she faced the ceremony. As family and friends came by to offer their condolences, some completely ignored me, including a few former friends who looked at me with anger. I suppose they felt it should have been me being honored, not Ashley's parents. I stayed quiet and focused ahead. I noticed 2 people weren't there, Rich and Olivia. I planned to ask my dad about them later. At the wake, most people overlooked me, likely because of the rumors that lingered. My mom approached me, urging me to stay for Ashley and the baby's sake. I pulled out my phone and showed her a picture of me, Jess, and Noah enjoying a fairground ride. She walked away, upset. I texted Jess to let her know I'd be leaving soon since I had been at the wake for nearly 2 hours, and people were starting to leave. I suddenly heard a loud argument near the bar in the pub. Jacob's drunken voice stood out sharply. "Where is that loser? What kind of husband leaves his pregnant wife to take care of everything alone? He's just scared of being a dad. Now he comes here pretending to help before he disappears again." He started to walk toward me, his fists clenched, clearly angry. My dad stepped in to calm things down. "Jacob, this is not the right time or place for this. You need to stop and think about how this affects everyone else." Jacob reacted with scorn. "What? Like your son who mistreats his wife? You must be so proud." Just then, Ashley appeared and slapped Jacob across the face. "Be quiet, Jacob. You ruined my marriage with your lies. I won't let you disrespect my husband anymore." The room filled with gasps, and my mom looked shocked as she realized the truth she had been kept from. I spoke firmly as I headed for the exit. "If the child is mine, I will be there for it. Ashley knows that. But are you both ready to take care of it if the child is yours?" Another gasp echoed in the pub as I walked out. Jess was waiting for me on the road. As I opened the door, Ashley called out in distress. "Chris, I love you. I've always loved you. I did what you asked, and everyone knows the truth now. Please come home. I need you, and the baby needs you." Her last words were muffled as tears fell and she sank to the ground. We stayed still while my parents went to support her. Jess looked at me with concern before asking, "Chris, what do you want to do now?" "Jess, please take me away from here. I can't stay any longer." I leaned back and closed my eyes, feeling overwhelmed by what had just happened. As we drove home, I explained everything to Jess. I noticed her thinking, wondering if she would ask what was on her mind. "How are you feeling, Chris? If things are as you say, this news will spread. You mentioned your mom looked shocked when the truth came out. Maybe she'll understand you were telling the truth. I hope so, especially with Christmas coming. It would be nice to meet them, along with Noah. What do you think?" I hesitated to answer, and Jess noticed my pause. Her grip on the steering wheel tightened a bit. "Jess, this has been a lot to take in, especially with Ashley showing up like that. I'm being honest with you. We are married, and we still are for now. Then there's the baby she is expecting, and it might be mine. I really want to be a part of its life. Can we figure out a way for me to be a part-time dad, even from a distance? Can you manage having another child stay with us now and then, if I can get the rights to do that? If the baby isn't mine, I don't care. But if it is, it would hurt so much not to be involved. I want us to be part of this child's life, me, you, and Noah. I love you, Jess. Please think about it." She kept looking out through the windshield as she replied, "That's okay." There was a pause. Then she took a deep breath and let out the words that were trapped inside. "I love you, Chris. If we have the chance to be part-time parents and give Noah a little brother or sister, I'm ready for it. I've thought about it a lot, and I'll admit it. I'm scared you'll see that baby when it comes and leave me. From what I know, when you first see your newborn, it changes everything. You create a bond that makes you promise to do anything for that little one." I quickly responded to her words. "I promise you right now there's no turning back. If the baby isn't mine, nothing changes. They'll need to deal with it. If it is mine, then I believe we can make it work." She took one hand off the steering wheel and held mine as we drove back down the M3, going home. After the funeral, things settled down back in Kent, according to my dad. Neighbors apologized for making things hard on my parents. Even the pub owner said sorry to my dad, and I was allowed back into the pub. That really made me smile. There was some backlash against my old friends, at least the ones still around. It turned out that after losing his job, rumors started about Rich facing a serious investigation. Apparently, some dog walkers had discussed finding a man in a ditch under suspicious circumstances. I think Dave Myers might have started those rumors too. Rich and Olivia moved up north, probably to where her parents live near Manchester. They never came back to Kent. Not long after the funeral, Jacob and Emily's marriage fell apart. They realized they were at the center of the trouble that started in Benidorm, and the fallout was tough for them. He blamed her for starting the ridiculous swap, and she blamed him for being careless and possibly getting Ashley in trouble. I thought it served them right. I remembered my dad saying that the truth would come out, and he was right. I had a talk with my mom, and it was still hard. The hurt and anger she held against me cut deep. Jess said time would make things better. My mom would be embarrassed, so I needed to be patient. I suggested inviting Jess and Noah to meet my parents. With Christmas approaching, Jess asked them through me if they wanted to visit. They politely declined. Ashley had been feeling very low since her parents passed away, and my last decision to not reconcile had left them trying hard to help her. We sent them a gift and a card for Christmas, including our address since they didn't know it. In return, they sent us a card and some small gifts, including some Lego for Noah. Spending time with Jess and Noah made me love Christmas again. Like all kids, Noah was starting to realize that Santa Claus wasn't a real person. This made Jess laugh as she wondered who was having more fun, me, picking out and wrapping gifts for Noah, or Noah opening them on Christmas Day. In the end, she said we were just as excited as each other. We gave him a Harry Potter train set. He rushed into our room to tell us that Santa had visited and left him lots of presents. He pulled me into his room. Soon after, a sleepy Jess came in, shaking her head and yawning, saying something about boys and their toys, as we worked on the train tracks. She smiled as she went to make us both coffee. We were invited to Derek and Cindy's for Christmas. While they were busy getting dinner ready, I sat with Jess and Noah and made a video call to my parents. Other than my secret meeting with my dad, they hadn't seen or talked to Jess or Noah before. "Happy Christmas, Dad. Is Mom with you?" The camera moved, and I saw my mom in her apron, working on dinner like Cindy. "Happy Christmas, Mom. Someone wants to say thank you." A shy Noah climbed onto my lap, looking at the camera. My mom paused and smiled nervously at the screen as Noah's face filled their phone. Thank you for my Lego. I like it." My dad said, "Glad you like it. After Christmas, I hope you can show us what you built." Noah nodded and hopped off my lap. I pulled Jess in close. "Happy Christmas, Mr. and Mrs. Watts. This feels a bit formal, but I understand why we have to do it this way right now." Suddenly, Ashley started yelling in the background, and I understood why my mom was anxious. "Please, Chris, I love you. You need to come home." My dad took the phone and walked into the hallway, closing the kitchen door and cutting off Ashley's voice. "Sorry, she was in the conservatory. We didn't hear her. Thanks for calling. We'll talk when we can. Happy Christmas to both of you." Then he was gone. I sighed and looked at Jess. It was hard for both of us to see Ashley so upset. We chose not to talk about it more because we didn't want to spoil our first Christmas together. Christmas came and then New Year, and we went to a party at her parents' home. When we arrived, some people looked surprised. Ashley had her hair done and wore a pretty black dress that showed off her figure. She looked amazing and held my hand as we danced together most of the night. For a change, we decided to stay over so we could enjoy some drinks. Noah almost stayed up until midnight, but he finally fell asleep. We took him upstairs and tucked him into bed. "I think I want to go to bed too," Jess said. "Oh, you didn't say you were tired." "I didn't, and I'm not tired. I want to make our New Year morning special. I'll be back, so don't go anywhere." With that, she went into the bathroom and then came back out in some new black sleepwear. I'd never seen her completely undressed, and I accepted that for now. When she walked over to me, there was a sparkle in her eye. After our first night together, things had changed a lot. The worry and uncertainty had lessened, though a bit of nervousness was still there. On Christmas night, she finally let me be more intimate with her, which made her very excited. As she approached me, she helped me change clothes slowly, and we kissed before she pushed me back onto the bed. She knelt beside me, and we welcomed the new year together, hoping it would be the same way forever. As the new year went on, I was happier than I ever remembered. But a small worry kept creeping into my mind. Ashley and the baby. And what if the baby was mine? One day at work, I unexpectedly got a video call from my mom. "Hello, Chris. Are you alone and able to talk?" "Yes, go ahead, Mom. Ashley is now overdue, so the baby will be here anytime soon." I quickly interrupted. "Is that because she was before all this?" I stopped myself. I knew that was not the right way to start this talk. "Mom, I'm sorry, that was not fair. I know you are trying to support Ashley. I understand, Chris. I'm trying to see it from your side, too. Ashley is going through a difficult time, son. We are doing our best to help her. After everything came out, anyone she thought were friends abandoned her, so we are taking care of her. She has family, but they are all older and far away. And remember, your dad is retired too. He might have retired early, but we are getting too old for this kind of trouble in our lives. If you were here right now, I would kneel and ask you to take Ashley back. I've seen her grow into a woman, but at the same time, I feel like she is falling apart, and it hurts me deeply. I know there is a small chance the child isn't yours. Ashley said it only happened once, so it's possible. Please, Chris, help bring our family back together. This is really hard for me." By now she was crying, and her feelings were clear and painful. "Mom, I'm sorry. In that place, I started to resent all of you for leaving me. When I returned home and found out about the lies meant to protect everyone, I thought a lot about things. There were misunderstandings, and I tried to be a better man. I extended a hand to Ashley. She chose to stay with them, thinking it was the right choice to fix things. But it wasn't. It shattered the small hope I had that we could make our marriage work. That chapter of our lives is over, Mom. If the child is mine, I will be there and do everything I can to be a good parent. The one thing I can't do is take Ashley back. I'm sorry, Mom. This is not what you want to hear, but it is the truth, and my mind won't change." I looked at her on my phone and could see she was heartbroken. It hurt me to see her like this. "Mom, I need to go. I have a meeting. Please call me tonight with Dad. And if there is anything you think I can do, let's talk about it, okay?" She nodded through her tears, and it was hard for me to hold back my feelings. I left my office to focus on our usual weekly meeting. At home, I shared the news about the call with Jess. She had seen me struggle in the past weeks, but had tried to keep our life running smoothly without saying much. We had just finished dinner when my dad video called me. When I answered, I saw my mom with tears in her eyes, and my dad looked strained. "Hi. Something must have happened. Is it about Ashley? Is she all right?" My dad nodded and started to explain. "Yes, it is. They have taken her to the hospital. She hasn't eaten well for days, and they are worried about the baby. They did a scan earlier, and the baby seems fine, but since she may be nearing delivery, they plan to induce labor tomorrow." My mom quickly added, "Chris, she keeps asking for you. She held onto my arm tightly in the hospital and made me promise to bring you to her. I promised her I would do my very best. Jess, as a mother, please, I need your help. I know that Chris and Ashley are done, but I'm scared for both the baby and Ashley's health." I pleaded, "Please let Chris come home for the baby's birth." We all sat quietly. I noticed my parents exchanging worried looks. Jess seemed serious as she turned to me. "I'm not sure how I feel about Ashley, but your mom is right. You should be there. No matter the issues, this might be your child. This baby hasn't done anything wrong, and it deserves a good start in life. I think you might regret not being there. Mrs. Watts, I should arrange for my parents to care for Noah for a few days. If you send me the hospital details, Chris and I can probably get there by about 9 tomorrow morning." Jess surprised me with her decision. It was something I should have decided, but I felt uneasy. I saw both my parents relax a bit, clearly relieved. I had to admit Jess made the right choice. After talking to Derek and Cindy and explaining everything, they came over to take Noah so we could leave early. I didn't know Derek and Josh had already sorted out my work while I was away, knowing I would need to return to Kent. The baby's paternity was important. We left at 5 in the morning and sat in a coffee shop at Ashford General Hospital waiting for my parents. Jess was understandably nervous since she hadn't met my whole family yet, and this wasn't the best situation for it. My dad had hidden his earlier meeting with Jess, making her even more anxious about making a mistake. When they arrived, it felt awkward. I could see my mom was having a hard time seeing me hold hands with Jess, but I wanted to show we were together. After a time, Jess started asking my mom about Ashley and her well-being. My mom was concerned Jess might want to talk to Ashley, but Jess reassured her that she was there to support me and would stay out of Ashley's way. With that, Jess impressed my mom. When we finished our coffee, my mom suggested that Jess and my dad get to know each other while I went to see Ashley. I kissed Jess before following my mom. "You've picked a good partner, Chris. When I first heard you had a girlfriend, I didn't like her without knowing her. I regret that Christmas didn't happen. We've been in a tough spot with Ashley. I promise, once everything settles down, I want to come visit your home. Will you let us back into your life?" I paused and gave her a hug. "Mom, we both really want you to be part of our lives. You will always have a place with us, I swear. But let's address the big question. Honestly, not knowing if this baby is mine is really hard for me. Jess notices it too, but hasn't said much, just supporting me. I just want to find out, so we can figure out how to move forward." She stepped back and smiled at me. We walked down the hall until we reached the maternity ward to see Ashley. I was shocked at how much she had changed since the last time I saw her. She was clearly pregnant, but she looked frail and worn. She seemed older, and it looked like she stopped caring for herself, so different from the Ashley I remembered. When she saw me, tears filled her eyes, but that was all she could manage. When she spoke, it was like she had given up. "Thank you for coming, Chris. I wasn't sure you would. Your parents have been so nice to me, really taking care of me. I know you might not want me around, but I'm hoping that when you see and hold your baby, it will help fix things. You'll do the right thing and come home." She seemed emotionally drained. Instead of the worried woman I had grown used to, her voice was calm now. I couldn't tell if she was just going through the motions, or if she still believed the baby could change everything. A doctor arrived and introduced herself. I was introduced as Ashley's partner, which earned me a stern look from the doctor. She explained what would happen next and mentioned she would return later to start the process of delivery. With that, she left, instructing the nurses to prepare Ashley. Ashley reached out to me, and I took her hand. The feelings I had for her were more like those for a sibling now. We started chatting among ourselves. My mom led the conversation, carefully avoiding any heavy topics. Suddenly, Ashley shivered, looking surprised, and it made me anxious. "Are you all right?" She smiled and guided my hand to her belly. For the first time, I felt the baby moving inside her. It filled me with mixed emotions. "You've missed all of this, Chris, and that really saddens me. I wish you could have been there when I first felt the baby move. It was so special." "Ash, believe me, I've thought many times about what I've missed, but we still don't know for sure, do we? I wish you had taken the DNA test. It would have made everything easier." She gently released my hand and laid them both on the bed. She looked up at the ceiling, calm but with tears starting to fall. I glanced at my mom for help. She shook her head slightly, telling me to let Ashley speak for herself. She began to talk softly. "Every day, Chris, I think about my choices. It was Emily's idea. I thought it was a good way to handle those trips to Benidorm, so I went along with it. I foolishly believed you were part of it. But the next morning, when we were all messaging about how fun it had been, Olivia said nothing happened between you two. She even said she thought you didn't know she was there. That's when my doubts and fears began. I thought you were so drunk you just fell asleep while I—" She paused, taking a deep breath. I could see this was hard for her. I squeezed her hand, and my mom did the same from the other side of the bed. Ashley collected herself and continued. "You suddenly looked out of place. Other than Olivia, we wore the guilt of our mistakes. I tried to hide it from you. I wanted us to go home and pretend none of this happened. I know it was foolish. When things got serious, everyone panicked, especially when the police showed up. Someone said you lost control because you found out I was expecting." She let out a small laugh before continuing. "Strangely, there was a bit of truth in that. After you were taken away and we were giving our statements, I was upset with you. I thought you knew everything and were just too drunk to remember. It wasn't until later that night at our house that Olivia finally admitted she hadn't told you about the plans. That was when I realized you were innocent. But by then, it was too late. You had been unfairly caught up in this, and everyone else was more worried about the truth coming out than facing up to what they did." She became emotional, and my mom tried to calm her down. Ash, take it easy. It's all done now. You did the right thing by telling the truth. Anyone except your old friends knows you're not a bad person. Remember, most of them faced serious consequences for what happened. But Chris thinks I'm a bad person. That's why he left me. I was so foolish. I didn't listen to him. I listened to them instead. They were scared he would expose everything if it went to court. They told me they wanted to talk with Chris to settle things for everyone's sake and to prevent it from getting worse. I discovered where they could be alone. I didn't realize they were going to hurt him, maybe even worse. I jumped in because she seemed too upset, especially being so close to having a baby. Ash, stop. You didn't know. They lied to you. They only cared about their own images. They didn't care about us. I'm sorry, Ash. I should have stayed that night. I should have talked to you before I left. I don't think it would have changed much. Our relationship was already weak, and what happened that night ended any hope we had. I'm really sorry. She nodded sadly and continued. I was angry at you for leaving, and then the stories began. When Rich and Olivia moved away, I knew it was true. I know you messaged Olivia. She told me to let you know she regrets not speaking up and stopping this from happening. We sat in silence, lost in our thoughts. After a little while, the doctor returned with a nurse who closed the curtains around the bed. Okay, Ashley, this might feel uncomfortable. I'm going to help you now. Are you all right with that? Ashley looked worried but nodded. I'm going to go see Dad and give him an update. Mom, can you stay with Ash? I'll be back soon so you can take a break. I left to find my dad and Jess. I informed them about Ashley's confession. Jess looked concerned. How are you doing, Chris? Are you okay with everything happening? I smiled and nodded. Yeah, I actually feel pretty good. If that baby is mine, this talk might help us move forward. Jess asked, but what if it's not your child? You know how I feel, Jess. If it's not mine, that won't be my concern. Both Jess and my dad were uneasy about how I felt about the situation. I finished my coffee and decided it was time to check on my mom. I kissed Jess and went back to the delivery room. When I entered, my mom told me she would be back soon, saying nothing would happen too fast. I sat in the chair next to the bed. Ashley had her eyes closed, looking up at the ceiling. After about 10 minutes, she turned and looked at me. Your new girlfriend has a young son, right? I didn't expect that question, and I wanted to steer away from this topic. I decided to keep my answers short. Yes. How do you feel about him? Nice kid. She pushed a bit further. That's not what I meant. Does he see you as a father figure? I felt uneasy hearing that. Ash, please don't do this to yourself. You already have an idea about the answers to the questions you want to ask. I won't go there. Are you going to have a baby with her? I sighed and closed my eyes. I'll answer this one question. I don't know. It hasn't been talked about yet. If it comes up, yes, I would like to have a child with her. Ash, please stop. This isn't the right time or place, and honestly, it's not your business right now. She smiled at me. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. I was just curious. She turned her head back, looking at the ceiling with her eyes closed. It was clear she was thinking hard about what to say next. I glanced at my watch. My mom should be back soon. I really hoped so. A few minutes later, she turned to me again. You walked away from me and into another woman's life. She has a young child who probably calls you Dad. I know your parents sent him Christmas gifts. You've done what you said you wouldn't do. You are raising someone else's child as your own. Think, Chris. You turned your back on me easily, and we have been together for years. You hardly know them. You could walk away from them both today. We have a golden chance to start fresh with our own child. Our child, not someone else's. I could see her eyes full of hope. She must have thought she found a way to make everything right. I shook my head slowly, feeling quite down. I understand what you want, but your thinking is flawed. This may not be my child you're talking about. I can't raise another man's child. Then Ashley lost her calm. But you are doing that now, you hypocrite! I started to get up to leave. Ashley tried to stop me as a nurse hurried over, looking stern. I'm not happy about this. If you can't calm down, you'll need to do this on your own, and we don't want that, do we? The nurse turned to me with disapproval. Please, sir, try not to upset your wife. I nodded and sat back down. Ashley was looking at me, wanting an answer. I knew it would hurt, but I felt it was time to be honest. I spoke softly and without anger. I have never met Noah's dad. He was born to Jess, my girlfriend, before I came along. He looks at me like I'm his dad. and I see him as my son, even though he isn't. When I see him, there's nothing from the past to cloud how I feel about him. I can't come back to you, Ash, even if you are having our child. There's been too much hurt to fix things. I'm truly sorry it's ended like this. If this isn't my child, unlike Noah, I know who the father is. His mother is my wife, and he should never have come from you. Every time I see that child, I remember the terrible things that happened day after day. I can't go there. It's not the same as Noah. Ash, don't fool yourself. It isn't. She sank back into the pillow and stared at the ceiling. My mom came back and noticed something was wrong. I quickly excused myself and went to find Jess. Ash was playing with my thoughts, and I didn't like it. As I walked through the hospital to find Jess, I began to think. When we first got close, Jess had said we were being safe when I thought I would finish. I assumed she was using protection. We had talked about the baby Ashley was having, and Jess promised she would support me through it all. She also said she would be much happier once I was divorced. But she had never mentioned wanting more kids. I thought we should focus on this baby first. When I reached the cafe, my dad told me Jess had gone outside to the garden for some fresh air. I found her sitting on a bench looking at her phone. "Hey, how are you, Chris? I can imagine how tough this is for you." She looked at me, then asked again, "Chris, are you okay? Is something bothering you?" "No, it's just something Ashley said, trying to get to me and make me doubt." Now Jess looked worried. "What did she say, Chris? I can see it's affecting you. Can I ask you something, Jess?" She nodded, still concerned. "When the time is right, would you think about having a child with me?" She gasped and quickly turned away, sitting in silence. I could hear her sniff a few times. Her silence told me all I needed to know. "Thank you, Jess. Now I know where I stand." She turned to me and wrapped her arms around my neck, burying her face in my shoulder with tears in her eyes. "Please, Chris, not here, not now. It's the wrong time and place. I'm sorry, we should have talked about this before. I promise I'll think about it." I didn't expect this, and it hurt, especially after Ashley's comments. "How hard is it to tell me you don't want my child, Jess?" Suddenly, my face stung from a strong slap. Jess burst into tears and hurried away from the bench. I jumped up to follow her, but a police officer who had been talking to a nurse in the garden ran over and stopped me. "Take it easy. I saw her slap you. I don't want to get involved. I've seen this many times. Just let her be. Let her calm down, and you need to do the same, okay?" I nodded, feeling sorry, and sat back down. I could feel people looking at me. I tried to call Jess, but she didn't answer. I kept trying for a few more minutes until her phone was turned off. My head dropped into my hands. I knew today would be tough, but not like this. I sent Jess a message. "Please forgive me. I shouldn't have said that. I'm not blaming Ash, but it really threw me off. Jess, I just want our family. You, Noah, and me. Anything else is just extra." I stared at my phone. The message was delivered, but not read. Maybe the officer was right. I should let her calm down. I walked back into the hospital. My mom and dad were together sharing a sandwich. "Chris, are you okay?" my mom asked, her worried look clear. "No, I messed up badly and Jess has left," I explained. After I shared what happened, my dad spoke up. "Chris, think about this. You brought your girlfriend to the hospital where your wife is about to have your baby. Jess knows Ashley wants you back. Every minute you spend with Ashley, you can see the worry on Jess's face. You asked her a question she didn't want to hear. I'll call her in about an hour to see if she'll talk to me if she hasn't come back." The rest of the day was tense. I kept checking my phone. I saw that Jess had read my message, but decided to let my dad try to explain how sorry I felt rather than call her. "Come on, Ashley, one more push. I can see the baby's head now." I didn't want to be there for this part. I wanted my mom to handle it. Ashley got upset when she found out I didn't want to stay, so I gave in. The doctor and nurse looked relieved. My heart raced as I held Ashley's hand. She gripped it tightly, pushing hard during this final stretch. Then the doctor held up the baby. I felt a wave of shock. I had always been fair-skinned with blue eyes and sandy hair. Ashley's family was also fair, with roots from the Scottish Highlands, which showed in her red hair. But the baby that appeared had olive skin and black hair. Jacob's mom was Portuguese. There was no doubt in my mind about who the father was. I let go of Ashley's hand. She was worn out and sweaty, and a nurse came to clean her up. I walked past the doctor and out into the corridor, putting my head against the wall. My parents had been waiting outside, looking worried. "Chris, is everything okay?" my mom asked. "Is something wrong with the baby or Ashley?" I couldn't even look at them. I kept my face pressed against my hands, which were on the wall. I felt like I couldn't breathe as I spoke. "Yes, something's wrong. That isn't my child." They came closer, ready to comfort me. But then we heard Ashley crying from the delivery room. "No, take it away, that's not my baby. Please bring me my baby, this isn't mine." As they stood there shocked, 2 more nurses hurried in. In no time, Ashley went from crying loudly to softly whimpering, and then she fell silent. The doctor came out looking worried and asked me to come with her to an office. "Mr. Watts, can you tell me about you and your wife's situation?" I explained our relationship since our trip to Benidorm. I mentioned that because of Ashley's actions, there was a chance the baby could be someone else's. From what I saw, it seemed very unlikely I was the father. The doctor rubbed her eyes and let out a long breath. "Get some rest. We had to calm her down for now. Come back tomorrow and ask at reception to see your wife. Honestly, I'm not sure where she will be. It depends on how she is when she wakes up, which will be in a few hours. Hopefully she will be calm enough to talk." I thanked the doctor and told my parents, who looked lost. I asked them to take me back to my hotel since I had more to think about. I didn't see a response from Jess, and it worried me. I hoped she would handle the news well that the baby wasn't mine. At least, we could move on. When I entered our room, I was surprised to see her suitcase packed by the door. She was sitting on the bed, staring at the TV. I wasn't sure if she was actually watching it. I picked up the remote and turned it off, then sat beside her. "Jess?" She kept looking at the blank screen. "Jess, it's over. It's done." I watched as a tear ran down her cheek. "Please, Jess, talk to me." She continued staring at the screen. I reached out to touch her chin, trying to turn her to face me gently. She stiffened, so I pulled back. I felt her shaking. Finally, she spoke softly. "Go ahead, go back to her. You have the child you wanted." "No, Jess, you don't understand. If you think this is the end for us, you're wrong. Didn't you read my message?" She nodded. "It doesn't matter, Chris. It's too late." "Please, Jess, you're not making sense right now." She stood up and faced me, starting to undo her blouse. "Jess, what are you doing? I don't want to get into this like this." Once she took off her blouse, she just stood there. She didn't cry out loud, but tears rolled down her cheeks. "Look at my body because I can't. I have to keep it hidden because of the shame I feel." I had never seen her bare midriff before. Now that I could see, I thought I understood why she hid it. She had several scars. After Noah, we tried again. I was pregnant and very happy. I loved being pregnant with Noah and looked forward to being a mother once more. But then things started to go wrong. Jerry was a businessman who made good money, but he started taking bigger risks. 2 of his projects failed. One was a factory in the UK that shut down quickly, and the other was an energy plant based on false promises. He felt like a failure in a world that values success. That's when his worries grew and he began to drink. He came to our Christmas party where there was a dance after the meal. One of the women had a piece of mistletoe, and it was passed around for fun. The kisses were quick and friendly, just pecks unless it was with a partner. A young co-worker came up to me with it, and I kissed him quickly on the lips. When we came home, Jerry exploded with anger, accusing me of having an affair because he felt like a failure and thought the baby might not be his. She paused, struggling to find the words. I tried, but he couldn't see the truth. Even his brother told him he was imagining things. I reached out to comfort her, but she gently moved my arm away and continued. I've never talked about the nightmare I went through. If it hadn't been for Noah, I don't think I would have made it. When I was 8 months along, Jerry came home after drinking too much. He said terrible things to me, claiming the baby wasn't his and that I should get ready to give it away. I stood in front of him and slapped him. It was the biggest mistake of my life besides marrying him. Tears were streaming down her face now and she was shaking. Please, Jess, stop. I understand. Don't do this to yourself. Her tone surprised me. Be quiet. You asked a question earlier today and I'm giving you the answer. She looked at me without changing her expression and went on. He hit me hard. I didn't feel the pain, but my unborn child did. The baby moved wildly from the shock as I fell to the floor. I begged him to stop as he continued. I felt helpless as that little one faded away inside me until I could feel it stop moving. I felt like I had let my child down. I didn't keep my baby safe. He loomed over me, saying everything was all right now and we could move on. I was too weak to respond, barely aware of my surroundings. I remember him calling his brother Brett and saying he would handle things. I hoped Brett would call for help. I wished for a chance at recovery. But instead, he came over, saw me in a bad state, and then called for help. I can still hear his words clearly. "Sorry, bro, I can't fix this." He believed he could mend what his brother had done. It wasn't over yet. At the hospital, they had to take my baby away. "Please, Jess, I'm asking you to stop. I see now that you've been hurt, but I didn't realize it was like this. Let me help." She pushed my hand away as I tried to pull her close. "I didn't just lose my baby, I lost who I am. I can't have children anymore. Are you happy now? I can't give you what you want. Go back to your wife. Even if this child isn't yours, the next one could be. We're done, Chris. I believed I would never let anyone back in my life, especially love, but then you came along and changed that. I was afraid to tell you I couldn't have children yet. I'm so sorry, Chris." I felt broken by what I had done. Every time I reached for Jess, she pushed me away, and each time it hurt more than the last. Jess's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it before picking up her things and heading for the door. "Where are you going, Jess? You shouldn't drive right now." "I'm going home. My dad brought my brother to drive my car back for me. I don't know what you'll do about work. That's for you and my dad to figure out. Goodbye, Chris. I thought we were meant to be, but I was wrong." Her voice was shaky as she left. I wanted to run after her, but I knew that would only make things worse. I was exhausted and emotional. If her dad and brother got involved, it would only complicate things. The best thing to do was to call her parents tomorrow and hope they understood the trouble I had caused. With that, I fell onto the bed and cried over the painful emptiness that had entered my life that day. I stood in front of my mom as she looked me over. I felt like a kid again as she wet her fingers and smoothed down my messy hair. "Good luck, son. Your dad and I will be rooting for you." I walked away from them. The weather had finally changed. The sun was shining and the sky was clear after days of stormy weather. I took it as a sign that things could get better. I strolled along the beautiful Bournemouth seafront, enjoying how the waves gently rolled onto the shore. As I walked, I saw two young women at a bar sipping drinks. They smiled at me, and one even winked. I reached the bench I had been searching for and sat down next to two people who were already there. "Chris!" Noah jumped onto the bench and wrapped his arms around my neck. It was hard not to get emotional. "Hey, little buddy!" Noah then pointed to the person beside me. "Who's that?" "That depends," I replied. "On what?" "If your mom will let you have a baby sister?" His eyes widened as he looked into the stroller. "She's so tiny, isn't she?" "She surely is." Jess finally spoke up. "Noah, show Chris your new scooter. Let's all go for a walk and you can ride along the front." Noah happily showed off his new scooter, doing a great figure of 8. I looked back at my parents and waved. They waved back from the table outside the cafe. I made a light joke, and Jess playfully punched my arm. Well, at least our parents seemed to get along. I pushed the stroller as we walked and talked. I tried to say sorry for what had happened, but Jess stopped me. She said it was all in the past and she didn't want to dwell on it. "Chris, are you really serious about what you told my mom and dad? You're saying things very differently than before." I nodded, smiling. "Yeah, you're right. Sometimes good things can come from tough times. You really put me through a lot back in that hotel, and it was hard for me. I didn't understand how difficult things had been for you. I didn't sleep that night. I felt such a deep loss from losing you, Noah. And the baby we never had. I never said it out loud, but I was excited about becoming a dad, even if it meant being a single dad. I'm truly sorry. I should have talked more about what it all meant to me. There wasn't going to be a future with Ashley anymore." When we went back to the hospital the day after the birth, we were taken to a room, and then suddenly a nurse tried to hand a little bundle to me. It was assumed I would take care of it. I stepped back and my mom took over. She stopped walking and looked at me. "What does Ashley think about all this? It's her child, too." I shook my head, letting out a deep breath. "It's been a nightmare. I don't know how to begin. When she saw the baby, she reacted badly and became very upset, so they had to calm her down. The next day, she threatened to harm the baby if they tried to give it to her. I didn't know about any of this until a doctor talked to me. They think it all became too much for her. Since Benidorm, things had changed a lot for Ashley after the sad loss of her parents. She had believed that I was the reason for everything and thought it would help us come back together. When she came to understand that this wasn't true, she struggled to cope. They took her to a mental health hospital to help her. The doctor said she was going through something called emotional rejection. This is rare, happening in about 1% of births, but they felt Ashley's situation was very serious. The doctor wasn't sure she would ever accept that the baby was hers. Jess continued asking questions, wanting to know everything. "And what about the father?" she pressed. I let out a small laugh. After the baby was born, my parents got a letter addressed to both me and Ashley from his lawyer. It said the man Ashley might name as the father wouldn't agree to a DNA test unless a court ordered it. My lawyer replied that we wouldn't ask for the test if the man agreed in writing to not take any responsibility or ask for parental rights. In return, there would be no request for financial help from him. I have both letters with me if you want to see. Jess smiled and shook her head. Just then, the baby began to cry. "What's her name?" she asked. "Sarah Candace Watts. We had planned to use Candace as a girl's name if we had a daughter. Since Ashley's mom was named Sarah, my parents and I thought it was a lovely way to honor her. She was a wonderful woman." Jess picked up baby Sarah, and I could see how happy it made her. She sat on a bench while I prepared a bottle for the baby. Noah returned, watching us closely. "Jess, I don't want things to go back to how they were. I want us to grow our family. We'll have a daughter to go along with our son. How do you feel about that?" "I don't understand, Chris. When we were together, it felt like you didn't like her even before she was born. I worry that your reasons for wanting us back together are mixed up, and that you may not truly want to care for Sarah since she isn't your biological daughter." I looked her in the eye and tried to smile. This was a key moment that could change my whole life. "The day after you left, I went back to the hospital. I won't lie, when I first saw the baby, it made me uneasy not because of her, but because of everything that happened around her arrival. I didn't want to hold her at first, and I didn't. It was hard to even look at her. Since I was thought to be the father, it was decided that she would be discharged into my care. My mom encouraged me to do it, and I'm thankful she did." When Sarah was released from the hospital, I remember driving home and watching my mom care for the little girl in her car seat. That first night, I felt really upset because I thought I had pushed you away, along with the boy who called me Dad. I was also sad that the child wasn't mine. The pain in my heart was deep, and I felt more lost than ever. I hardly slept. When Sarah cried at night, I went to check on my mom. She was getting the bottle ready to feed Sarah. I sat beside her while she fed the baby. Soon, my mom started to doze off. The stress had worn her out too. I asked her to show me how to help. I wanted to support her and share the responsibility. My mom smiled weakly and thanked me. She looked like a weight had been lifted from her. I think she understood what was about to happen. Sitting with her on the sofa, she gently handed me the tiny baby. She felt so light. Sarah was crying because she had lost the bottle. My mom helped me hold her so I could start feeding her. As Sarah took the bottle, my mind was full of thoughts. I thought about how she came to be and felt frustrated that this baby should have been mine. But then, something began to change inside me. Something I hadn't felt since I found out the baby might not be mine. I started to think about what I truly wanted. I wanted the family we had, even if it happened by chance. I had caused a big rift in that relationship and realized I could help mend it. I could take on the responsibility and make our family whole again. It didn't happen instantly. Over the next few days, I grew closer to Sarah. I tried to convince myself it wasn't real. I watched my mom, and I hadn't realized how much she and my dad had already given to Sarah, even before she was born. I could see in my mom's eyes that this was her granddaughter, and none of that mattered to her. "If you don't want me and Sarah in your life, I will be sad. But I am here for her," I said. Mom smiled, and her eyes filled with tears. Noah looked at her and started to smile too. "Those are happy tears, right, Mom?" he asked. "Yes, Noah, they are the happiest tears I've had since you were born." I sat there smiling, shaking my head slowly as Jess fed Sarah. Jess noticed and asked, "What's so funny?" I looked at her with a grin. Sort of. My old life ended on the last day of my summer holiday in Benidorm. Less than a year later, I'm in a new place, here in Bournemouth. This is now my home, not just a vacation spot. Our lives begin today, and I'm excited for a new family life with you, Noah and Sarah. 18 months later, we were married. Ashley was now a part of my past. Before our wedding, we got a surprise. The lawyer for Jerry claimed that Jerry thought Noah might not be his son and wanted to give up any duties for him. He wanted Noah to be adopted. I was shocked when I learned he wanted £1.5 million back that was meant for Noah as he grew up. When I talked to Jess about it, she agreed right away. I asked her where we would find that kind of money, and she just rolled her eyes. You do know that a venture capitalist usually makes a lot of money, right? I told you I can keep this house for a while, and this won't change things much for us. The day after we got married, Noah officially became Noah Watts. I felt so proud. For our honeymoon, we decided to wait until the kids were a bit older so they could stay with their grandparents without too much trouble. To create a special memory, we spent a week at a center park in Sherwood Forest with both children. After a morning in the swimming pools, we were having lunch at a large picnic table. Suddenly, I sat up when someone joined Jess at the table. When Jess saw who it was, she moved Sarah's stroller closer. "Hello, I'm guessing you're Jess. You know who I am. It's good to see you again, Chris," said Ashley. I almost asked her to leave when a young boy around Noah's age climbed onto the bench next to me. He held out a child's toy bow and arrow, and I noticed he was dressed like Robin Hood. I looked at Jess, who was as puzzled as I was when another guy sat beside me with food and drinks. "I'll introduce everyone," said Ashley. "Tyler, this is my ex-husband Chris, his wife Jess, and their kids, Noah and Sarah. By the way, thank you for naming her after my mother." Jess picked up Sarah from the stroller and held her closely. Ashley gently touched Jess's arm, and I started to stand, but it was a friendly gesture, not meant to cause trouble. Ashley looked right at me and continued with the introductions. "This is our son, Ben. Tyler and I are engaged now." I stared at her, surprised. "I mean you and your family no harm, but I have questions that you can only answer, Chris. Why? Why did you spend 9 months trying to ignore Sarah's existence when you signed her birth certificate as her father?" I looked at Jess, and she nodded slightly, encouraging me to go on. "You planted the idea in my head, even though I didn't realize it at the hospital. Remember when you called me a hypocrite over Noah because you didn't see the difference? That really stuck with me. That night, I talked with Jess, and..." Jess jumped in to continue. "We had a big argument. I hadn't shared some important things with Chris. It hurt me, and I ended things with him. I couldn't deal with a situation that felt impossible to fix. But now it feels different, and that's partly thanks to you. It might not be the usual way, but it worked out. You see, I can't have more children." Ashley listened to Jess with a look of sadness. I went on. The next few days blurred together with all the activity. Social services wanted to make sure Sarah was safe, given what had happened in the hospital. "I tried to reach you, Ashley, I really did." Ashley smiled, which surprised me. Then Tyler spoke up. "You don't remember me, do you? I was in the office when the doctor talked to you about Ashley. I work at the hospital as a psychiatrist. It sounds strange, but that's where we met. I didn't pursue anything with Ashley until she left the hospital. We were both searching for something. My wife just left with her new boyfriend, leaving me and our son in a difficult situation. In finding each other, we found strength." Ashley smiled brightly as she added, "I have a son, Chris. Just like you, I got involved with Ben's life, and that's okay. If you love someone, you embrace every part of their life, including their children, regardless of how they came to be. You had stopped loving me, and Tyler helped me deal with that." I nodded and replied, "I'm glad you found happiness, Ashley. I'm happy for your family." Ashley and Tyler held hands across the table. "Almost, Chris. In 7 months, we'll be welcoming our own child," she said. We congratulated them both, but then the mood became serious. I felt anxious, worried they might say they wanted to take Sarah from us. "I believe in fate, Chris. That's why we're here together at this picnic table. I talked to Tyler about this, and I want you and Jess to adopt your daughter. I plan to speak with a lawyer so we could settle things and move forward. Jess, I'm truly sorry to hear you can't have more children. Maybe this can help ease your pain." Now it was Jess and I holding hands. We talked a bit more while we had our lunch before we each went our own way. It felt like I had some closure, like I had finished a part of my life and placed it on a mental shelf. As we turned to leave, Jess stopped and gave me a warm kiss. When I looked at Noah, he made a funny face. Yuck, I'm never going to do that kiss stuff. With that, I bent down and lifted him up. Jess took Sarah from her stroller and we all came together for a big hug, showering our kids with kisses. They both giggled as they tried to push us away. Sorry, kids, but parents have the right to kiss their children as much as they want. Right, Jess? She didn't reply, and we continued kissing our kids while they laughed and squirmed to break free. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to Infidelity Plus to stay updated with more captivating tales of infidelity and payback. Turn on notifications so you're the first to see our latest content.